I'm excited to welcome two guests today. First off, welcome to Exploring the Vintage NFT Space with ZeroG podcast, and my guests today are Midnight Lightning and Paws. We may refer to them as their real name later on, but for now that's good. Why don't you introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Midnight Lightning, also known as Brooks, and yeah, one of the lead developers for the Mooncat project. Have been a longtime user of the project since it launched in 2017, and joined the team part-time in 2021, and just recently transitioned to full-time working as a development member for the team.
Oh, you're muted.
I am Anna Marie, otherwise known as Paws. I'm the community manager for Mooncats, and this is my Genesis Mooncat, otherwise known as Eclipse.
That's awesome. Well, let's start it off. So first off, Mooncats is one of the biggest historic NFT projects that kind of really started the whole vintage revival scene. But kind of before we get into the project, let's go back and talk a little bit about your guys' background. So, I mean, first off, let's talk about how you got involved in crypto and what interested you about that.
Sure. I can speak to that one my first exposure to cryptocurrencies in general was back in 2012, and that was Bitcoin at the time was the only leading one there. And that was of the era where many other altcoins were launching, of taking the idea of Litecoin, Namecoin, were trying to do other things similar to Bitcoin and doing it in a different way. Myself as a developer got intrigued around that era, and I did a bunch of work, freelance work and part-time work, exploring that space, working with the code bases. At that time, if you were wanting to develop things, those were what we would now call L1s, launching separately from each other. And so people who had ideas of wanting to do other separate things would need developers to create the new node software, the actual underlying software to run the L1. And so I helped contribute code for a bunch of those, worked with the Namecoin branch as well as a user, and continued on through getting involved with Ethereum as it launched, and recognizing that as smart contracts were becoming a thing, that developers who could read the code could contribute to the learning curve of people coming on board to actually help people understand what it was, which positioned me very good for when I heard that the Mooncat Rescue project launched in late 2017 to be able to understand what it was. And I had just recently done a whole bunch of blog posts on trying to educate people on what Ethereum was. And the fact that the Mooncat Rescue project launched with a kind of educational component of trying to help teach people a little bit about what the proof of work mining algorithm was, it intrigued me, and that led me to be one of the first users of that project and continue on with that.
And I mean, just to give you a sort of idea of how small the sort of educational space was back in the day, Brooks wrote this amazing, really detailed write-up on the Mooncat Rescue subreddit. And it got 5, 6 upvotes, one of which was from Ponderware, one from a couple of his buds. And it's great because we look back at it this day and laugh about it, because it will forever be stuck at 6 upvotes.
As you can't upvote Reddit posts after a certain amount of time. And yes, it launched, and I thought it was a good project and wanted to add some third-party perspective to it, and spent the time to write up a decent, real lengthy write-up from a developer perspective to vouch for the integrity of the project. And it got a few upvotes, but then the project was very early, and for people to even understand what this digital collectible thing was, in the window of time in which the article could be upvoted, it only got a grand total of 6, and took a little bit for the project to be completely understood.
How about for you, Paws?
So I actually came to Mooncats post rediscovery, which was March of 2021, and we'll sort of dive into that a little bit more deeper. So I've sort of been in and out of crypto since about 2018. I've sort of done some really casual mining of like really small amounts of cryptocurrency. At the start of 2021, there was a lot of articles about like the future of NFT gaming, and so I had started to get really interested in NFTs. We sort of hit that rediscovery renaissance, and I was reading a lot about it. And I hadn't decided to sort of pull the trigger on my first NFT. But then my buddy Brooks messaged me and said, "Hey, you remember those many, many years ago where we had that funny conversation? I was in like medical engineering software at the time, and you said to me as a joke that if I ever needed a community manager, that you should call me. Well, funny thing is I work on this cat NFT now, and we're looking for a community manager. Would you be interested in applying?" And I was just like, well, I was actually thinking about leaving gaming. I'd been in gaming for about 15 years at that point. So lay it on me. What would the job look like? And so I interviewed and ended up eventually accepting the position.
Oh, that's exciting. Just as an aside, what were you doing in gaming? Were you a programmer?
No, I know how to program, but I absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
I've sort of run my own business in the gaming's industry. It was called Is It Fun? Social Media and More. And I was kind of that person that did all of the little fiddly tasks that it just you don't need someone at your company full time to do it, but someone has to do it. So it's things like helping do layout for manuals and box art, doing backup box and storefront translations for your video games.
yeah.
So like if you put your video game out in Europe, you have to translate to French, Italian, German, and Spanish. So I was just like either doing those translations myself or finding the people that did it. I was a social media coordinator and a community manager for people that needed it. If there was game testing that needed to be done, I could pitch in as a QAer, and just sort of like all of these little tasks that like you never need one single full-time person doing all these little fiddly details, getting stuff ready for lot check, and just like chasing after Nintendo to be like, hey, is my game approved yet? Lots of little things. It's all like people stuff, people in communication.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's an interesting niche. Well, I wanted to follow up that question we'll start with you, Brooks. So I know you said you got involved in crypto in 2012, but specifically, what compelled you to actually take the leap and buy into it? Like, what was the motivation? What fascinated you about it?
And so from my perspective as a developer, at that time, so when I heard about it in 2012, so Bitcoin had launched in 2009, so it was already a few years old. And obviously it continued to grow past that point. But from that perspective of at least having a few years in investigating it as a developer, what I realized it was of a security level that they were trying out some new things with public-private key encryption, which that technology had already existed, but now actually making it directly financial, that it is a currency that they're trying to do. And so in reading over their algorithms and figuring out if it gets 51% attacked, here's the vulnerabilities of it, and here's, exactly where we're trying to make sure that it does stay secure. I realized that this whole network is like a very large honeypot, that if any bad actor could figure out how to crack this thing, it's a financial vehicle, and even at that time, there were millions of dollars that could be gotten if you can crack this algorithm, if you can figure out what security level they're using and thwart it. And the fact that it was a public ledger, publicly distributed, open to anyone to interact with, and it had not been cracked yet, even in the 4 years at that time, to me was very intriguing as a developer, of knowing, from running my own websites and having servers be up, knowing that there are bad actors who try to knock on the door all the time to just even see if they can get in. And so knowing that this network must be under constant attack and hasn't fallen in 4 years, that was the first thing to me of realizing it must have something stable enough to at least stave off the majority of the hackers who had been trying for 4 years to crack into it. And indeed, to this day, I believe any of the losses of funds or hacks that have been described for Bitcoin and some of the cryptocurrencies are mostly human error or social engineering of getting people's private keys. It's not actually a thwarting of the underlying algorithm. And so the underlying algorithm seems to still be sound in protecting the intrinsic value of the thing.
You know, one thing I think is really fascinating is that, yeah, I mean, and today Bitcoin is, you know, over $10 billion, I think, off the top of my head. I know it's huge, but and you know, to your point, it's really fascinating that it remains unbroken. But not just Bitcoin itself being the largest honeypot, but in a sense, it's also the crypto space has also transformed the like security space in a tangential way, in the sense that now we have economic motivations, direct economic motivations to hack any computing resource to directly monetize it by mining on top of it. So we've essentially put a economic incentive to hack everything that's easily hackable, but again, at the same time, putting a greater incentive for people to secure their public resources. So I think that's really interesting repercussion of that as well.
Indeed.
And how about for you, Paws?
I mean, I'm a gamer. I like seeing numbers go up. But also I think the thing that really sort of pushed me into, you know, being a lot more interested and engaged in crypto was in high school. I actually took this course called Practical Mathematics. And it didn't teach like, you know, code and sign and algebra or anything, but it did teach you what it was like to buy and sell on the stock market.
Oh yeah.
And so, you know, I have always been sort of interested in that sort of flex and pull and like choosing the right thing and being really patient. But the stock market always felt way too volatile for me. And I realized the irony in me saying that versus cryptocurrency. But, you know, the reason that I sort of gravitated towards cryptocurrency was sort of this premise of if you're just patient enough, you will always make some money. And I didn't feel, obviously, that is not a real guarantee in cryptocurrency, but I definitely felt like it was a stronger guarantee than some of the stocks that I'd taken a look at. And so, you know, I dabbled around in a little bit of cryptocurrency, and I always conveniently made money. And so it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. And when NFTs came along, it was like, oh, more things that I can gamble money on and potentially make more money on. I'm here for it.
Awesome. Yeah, it's definitely a fun space, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting from the financial perspective of having an open network, whereas, yeah, compared to the traditional finance system of having potentially things behind, you know, closed doors, or even like having, you know, hours of operation, like having the Bitcoin halving cycle of like the supply is like fixed in stone and cannot change, or in having the, you know, there is no closing bell, there is no, you know, time when the market is offline, of like that then therefore a more pure representation of supply and demand, that there are things that are more locked in place and cannot be manipulated, sort of a thing of, yeah, does it feel a little bit more genuine economic forces in that sense?
Yeah, I think one thing that I learned that was really powerful to me is when I learned how, you know, we previously had gold standards for currencies, but when I learned how basically the underlying gold supply is in effect manipulated for, you know, on the market too. I mean, really crypto assets are the only thing that you have the cryptographic provenance, and you can show, you know, publicly that something actually exists and the ownership is with who it says it is, right? So it's really exciting.
Yeah, it's as people gain more understanding of that history, of like, will that history gain value just by being, yeah, there is a audit trail. Like, it can be viewed as an ownership trail of, were you part of the ownership of this thing? Can you, you know, track who it originally came from, like who was the original artist, but also as an audit trail of, did it actually go through the hands that it was supposed to, from whoever is claiming it. It's a useful thing to have as the public ledger, and now that it is available, what will people value that as is
And
that's
interesting to
one
see.
of the, go ahead.
I think it's really cool that we see that sort of so regularly in effect in the Mooncats community, because there are people that they buy and sell large numbers of Mooncats speculatively. And then once they sell them, they continue to track them to see who owns them next and what accessories they put on them and whether the price goes up or down. And they very publicly talk about it. And so for us as sort of like the developers, we love seeing that because it's such an educational tool for people that are new to the crypto space. of like, hey, I sold this thing and I can continue to see how it performs even after I've let it go. That's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. I mean, it's one of the biggest innovations that NFTs bring to art is that provenance. And I mean, we see over and over again how in the traditional art market, how there's again you have fakes, you have forgeries and misrepresentations that and murky histories that can't be 100% proved. I mean, all of that stuff changes with crypto. I mean, it's a game changer. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the people who, yes, who are familiar with the traditional space of knowing a counterfeit in the traditional space is something that's, as close to atomically perfect as the physical original, whereas in the digital space, you can very easily make bit for bit copies, but the unique identifier of what that thing is, the serial number, the origin, the history of it can be tracked. And so you have similar ideas, but people need to then recognize it's not necessarily how well you can replicate the visual appearance of the thing, but you also are you replicating the provenance, the history, the origin, the other identifiers for it.
Well, and it's so fascinating that like the provenance of a painting is generally not particularly interesting. Like, do we know who owned the Mona Lisa before it went into a museum? Does anybody really care? There's definitely going to be some people. Do people care about what NFTs that Pranksy buys and sells and are specifically interested in buying into collections that he is engaged in? Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but the provenance goes back. I mean, one of the reasons the provenance is so important in the traditional art market is it's part of how they help try and basically establish the authenticity and the integrity of the work, which is never 100% because there's always liars and cheats out there, right? So,
right.
I mean, so again, we're taking that aspect that we can prove cryptographically, and now we can also prove ownership too, without a doubt.
And that's a thing of, as we're now with digital collectibles being, the market and the community are asking for utility for the things to, I want to do something with my piece as well. When you are an owner of a traditional art piece, if it goes from person to person to person of ownership, the person who owned it, who's not the artist, doesn't necessarily like add anything to it, to that sense of, does it matter that it, when it hopped through 3 different owners, they didn't really contribute to the piece itself. Whereas with now these digital pieces, Mooncats directly, someone who owns it along the chain could name it, and once named, they are then permanently named. For Mooncats also, they can get accessories added to them. And for other NFTs who like go through games or go through levels or go through transformations, the person who made that NFT go through that transformation is now part of the lore of that piece, in addition to the original creator. And so that, you can, even if it's no longer yours, still be part of the history of that piece.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think it's fascinating. Well, on that topic, Brooks, when did you first like really learn about, I guess, NFTs in the crypto space? When did you? I know you're an OG, but
before it was called NFTs.
Yeah.
In that sense of, because yes, I was aware of CryptoPunks when they launched, and then Mooncat Rescue when they launched, both in 2017. And at that time, the term NFT was not used. I think they both described themselves as like art experiments or digital collectibles at the time. And so yes, I became aware of them then. Since I have a programming background, but also an art background. My actual formal training is actually I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts. I took an art degree as opposed to a programming degree, and it happened to be from a college that taught art by using code. So it's like I treat code as my paintbrush. I like making cool things with art. That I like the output to be visually interesting in that sense. And so yes, these projects intrigued me as they came out in that 2017-2018 era of seeing code plus the user equaling art, and then now and also art that can continue and art that can do other things was very intriguing to me. So I'd say 2017 was the era that I first got in the idea of, hey, this new Ethereum thing plus art could be something cool.
And
Awesome.
that really sort of guided what Mooncats you rescued as well.
That piece of the Mooncat Rescue Project in specific, of that idea of you are rescuing them. The term minting, like as a verb, hadn't really been established as well. So the idea of you're creating artwork, and for this particular project, yeah, they used the term rescuing, and it fit into the lore of you picked as the rescuer, you searched for a Mooncat from among the ones that were on the moon to be rescued, and then you had the choice. Here's what your digital collectible will be if you hit this button. Do you wish to have this one, or do you want to try again? Which is a very different experience than what a lot of modern NFTs have for purchase it, and at a later point in time, you get it revealed of what it is. With the Mooncat project, it was, here's an option. Do you like this option, or do you want to go fish, again, piece of it? And so, yes, in those early days, I liked that aspect of myself as an artist, being able to say, oh, which, these are going to be my now digital companions. I get to pick which ones appeal to me. And so, yes, went through many iterations of searching to find the companions that I most resonated with as I was doing my rescuing.
I mean, and that has to be one of the earliest, interactive art projects in crypto, and from that perspective too.
Indeed.
Yeah, there really isn't anything like the original Mooncat Rescue minting experience. There wasn't before, as far as we can tell, and I don't think there's anything that has been really identical to it since either.
Not identical. There's been a few similar ones. Avastars is another one of like, and that one was one of scroll to see many different options and then pick the ones that you're interested in.
Yep.
Was another similar one of kind of see the options in advance. And Autoglyphs, when they launched, did have the idea of, it is a generative idea that it can generate millions and millions of them, but we're only going to make a certain number of them into on-chain representations, which is also similar to the Mooncat Rescue project of the randomization space of the possibilities was in the billions, but only 25,000 were going to be rescued from the moon, and the others would just exist as possibilities, and lore-wise, they're still on the moon watching us at the moment.
Oh yeah, funny. Yeah, how about you, Oz? When did you first really hear about NFTs in the crypto space?
So as someone who was kind of pretty deep into the Pokemon trading card game as in my teens, and then later Magic the Gathering, I was sort of kind of familiar with this concept of NFT gaming, although I hadn't really did a deep dive into them. And then sort of the start of 2021 and this resurrection of all of these historical NFTs and Axie really started to break into sort of mainline gaming media. That was when I was starting to sit up and pay attention and be like, all right, this is probably going to be the future of collectible gaming. And I started to really deep dive into what it would look like to own these things. And the Mooncats were my first NFT, but it definitely isn't going to be my last.
Awesome. And in terms of the Mooncats project, what was the what the intention was behind launching it for the originally? Was this just as an experiment, or was it what were they trying to do? Was it as you were saying, was it educational portal, or?
It had some aspect of education and some aspect of experimentation and pushing the boundaries of what this new Ethereum thing could do. So as a sense, the original two developers who were friends and formed Ponderware, the company, as a two-person team back in 2017, had the idea of, hey, pushing the boundaries of what this Ethereum stack could do different than some of the other cryptocurrencies at the time. They came up with the idea of digital collectibles, somewhat inspired by CryptoPunks as an idea, and added in this ability of recognizing that CryptoPunks are set at the moment of creation. The Larva Labs decided, that arbitrarily they wanted 10,000 and arbitrarily they wanted to be looking like humans, and then also what those specific humans were, or apes or aliens or zombies, the individual accessories. Yes, Larva Labs got to choose the rarity, but then they pre-randomized it and selected that one master image that represents what the CryptoPunks are, that is the one giant ping of all of them, was set in stone the moment the contract went live. The Mooncat Rescue Project and their initial idea of not having that be set in stone, of there could be another process by which the collection is curated through the process. And they realized this was an interesting new idea they wished to explore and created the project from that.
I was thinking about it the other day too, and it kind of like we were just talking about gaming pause. The thing that it reminded me of is how the collectible aspect of it works is almost like emergent gameplay, really, where it's kind of like a distributed consensus about what's valuable and not, and what's desirable and not within the collection. So it's also interesting to see that stuff emerge as well within the Mooncat community too.
100%. And the thing that as the community manager has always sort of been super fun for me to watch is there have sort of been sort of these subgroups that crop up inside of the Mooncats community where a lot of people upon minting their Mooncats realize that, hey, some of these cats have a real similar look to popular cats in our culture. So, there is sort of the Garfield line of Mooncats that are orange tabbies. And then branching off from that, the community decided there was also going to be the concept of a gutter Garfield, where it is not an orange tabby, it is an orange spotted cat. And they're not quite Garfields, but we love them just as much anyways. And that was not something that Ponderware decided at all. There is no metadata that says orange tabbies are called Garfields and rates them in any way. But the community has decided this is the hue range that we have decided represents the Garfield sub-breed inside of Mooncats, and they fetch a higher premium, even when all other things equal, they wouldn't necessarily be worth more.
And that's sort of to the original idea for the project. The only baked in difference that the original team put on it was the Genesis Mooncats versus the rescued Mooncats. And the collection is majority rescued Mooncats. And those are easily identified by they are very vibrantly colored. That all of the rescued Mooncats are, in color theory terms, they're as saturated as they can be. They are very vivid colors. Whereas the Genesis Mooncats were a small subset, originally only 256 of those, and they're only black or only white. And the kind of lore behind that was those were the only Mooncats that could actually integrate into Earth society as, passing as a terrestrial cat because they were black or white. But then the community also recognized, even though a very vividly orange cat is not actually realistic, we do actually have in our culture a vivid orange cat, which is Garfield. We also have a vividly pink cat, the Pink Panther pieces of it. And, those sort of things evolved that way. So even picking out, we do have some cultural references in the rescued set, even with the original lore being, it's very much easier for the Genesis Mooncats to camouflage into Earth society because they aren't as vividly colored as all the rescued ones.
And that also kind of ties into sort of the idea of what was the intent behind the collection, because rescuing a Mooncat was free. It cost you nothing but gas. And I think, Brooks, the first one that you rescued back in 2017 cost you 50 cents.
Yep, and that was even advertised on the site. The site said it might cost you up to 50 cents. And for me, it was in the 20 to 30 cent range if you caught it when, gas was only, 2 gwei at the time.
And so the one thing that was supposed to sort of pave the way forward for the project was the 256 Genesis cats. And they were to be released on a bonded curve. Am I using that term right?
Yep. Yeah,
okay.
That in various sets, and each set of 16 would be slightly more expensive than the previous set.
Unfortunately, despite the large amount of testing that Wander Wonder and Jerofles put into the original contract, the one thing that they did not test is whether or not they were going to get paid. And so when the Genesis Mooncats were paid for, the ETH went into the burn address.
So the Genesis Mooncats did get more expensive with each release, but when someone bought a Genesis Mooncat, it didn't go to the Ponderware team, it went to the burn address, unfortunately. So both the rescued ones were available just to mint for free, and the Genesis ones that were kind of designed to be the way that they would get paid for the project didn't actually turn out that way. So the whole project ended up being a art piece that didn't actually, through the initial minting, didn't bring anything back to the original creators. They themselves minted or rescued some themselves, which is now just their personal Mooncats piece of it. But yeah, as part of the core contract, it didn't actually give anything back to the original team.
And that touches on something. So I remember during the rescue, and we can jump into that next. I didn't remember seeing anything on the OG page about the ability to purchase, pay for one of the Genesis Mooncats. Was that on the page at the time?
It was. The original website had basically two main directions you could go. You could read about the lore and go search for a Mooncat, which was rescuing them. They also had the adoption center, which was after you
Yeah.
owned a Mooncat, it was a built-in storefront. Opensea didn't exist at the time because NFTs didn't exist at the time. And so there was a built-in adoption center for being able to list your Mooncat as being willing to find a new owner. And that was actually where the Genesis Mooncats went directly to the adoption center. They were essentially owned by the Zero address and put up for adoption in the adoption center, the same as if someone rescued one and then put it up for adoption there. So if you wish to get a Genesis Mooncat at the time, yeah, you didn't go the rescue route. You went to the adoption center, and among all of the cats available, some were rescued and some were Genesis ones that were up for purchasing there.
Which ended up creating sort of an interesting dilemma because the Genesis Mooncats were manually released by the Ponderware team. Like there was no automation to like, all right, once we hit X amount of Mooncats, the Genesis automatically go up to sale. So when the rediscovery happened and all like 18,000 plus Mooncats that were remaining in the contract got minted out, all of a sudden, Wonder, and Jerfles had this dilemma of like, okay, we've released 96 Genesis Mooncats. There's supposed to be 256 in total. How do we decide whether we're going to release the remaining 160? And what does that look like? Because at this point, there were plenty of bots that could buy up these cats the second they hit the market. So was there a reasonable way to combat that?
Yeah, and what path did they end up choosing on that with the remainder of those Genesis cats?
Sure. And that became it became a community vote. So after the March 2021 rediscovery, where the rest of the collection got minted out prior to March 2021, there were still about 19,000 left. The interest in the project hadn't really taken off, and of the 25,000 sized collection, only about 6,000 had gotten, or no, what was it up to? About 57,000 had been rescued. And so, yeah, there was a large chunk that had still left to be rescued. Then, yeah, in one day, the remainder got rescued out. And the original team, when they became aware that people were now interested in wanting to know more about this now old project, they decided to put it to a community vote. And then everyone who then was a Mooncat holder was able to vote whether or not the original team should destroy the administrator private key that would allow them to release more. And would not be destroying the cats, but they would just be staying on the moon. Or if they wish to figure out some other way to get the remaining set of Genesis Mooncats out. And that initial vote came back to destroy the keys. And so the team did so. And so the original contract is now essentially locked, that there is no more administrative key. The last few sets of Genesis Mooncats didn't get released, and they remain on the moon, being guardians of the remainder of the rescue of the more vivid Mooncats that did not get rescued that are still on the moon.
Yeah, so we have a total supply of less than 100 then of the Genesis Mooncats, and
correct.
Wow, that's really that's for people in the historic space, those Genesis Mooncats are certainly a grail. So very exciting. It's also really cool that they honored the community vote too, because again, like you were saying, they hadn't received any funds from this project even at the end of that mint out. So that had to be a little bit tough too. But let's talk about the rediscovery. So I can start there with how I found out about it. So I was early on last year, I was just learning about NFTs and kind of figuring out that whole space. I mean, for me, I had been in crypto for a long time as well, in 2012 as well. But for me, when I came across punks in 2017, or not 2017, in 2018, and again in 2019 and 2020, I never bought one because it never really gelled with me, right? I couldn't figure it out. But I had mined some I'd mined some old NFTs in 2018. They were called crypto Pepes. It was interesting. Have you ever heard of ZeroX BTC?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so they use the concept that ZeroX BTC pioneered, and they applied that to NFTs. So what they did is they created a contract where you did proof of work mining on Ethereum, and then you were rewarded with these tokens, and then you could redeem X number of these tokens for an NFT randomly from this pool of the Genesis NFTs. A really interesting concept. So, in early last year in 2021, I jumped into the Punks Discord and just to kind of figure it out, because I kept coming back to the Punks and I was like, what's this all about, right? I mean, this like, so I lurked in there for a couple of weeks, and I kind of learned like the value proposition and the digital scarce, the whole idea of digital scarcity for NFTs versus crypto, and I decided to pull the trigger on my own crypto punk, which is a big leap for me at the time. But so I was hanging out there, and I was there for the rediscovery in March. So I remember a couple cats were talking about finding this old website, and that the contract was still live. So I was actually able to jump on. I was able to rescue 11 cats myself, and it's one of my regrets is I could have been rescuing those all night long, but my brow, like that, those contracts were really flaky with MetaMask back then, so it like hung my MetaMask, and instead of like relaunching my browser and restarting MetaMask, I was like, this just isn't working. But so I still have my my 11 Mooncats, but I always thought it was one of the things I loved about it too was the retro vibe and aesthetic that they had, but also how it was really friendly, and I don't know, it was like an innocent project, right? Instead of being, I don't know, kind of crude or anything else like that. So it's a really fun project. And again, I really enjoyed that rescue experience. That was really cool, where it has the radar that goes across the the moon,
scanning across the moon. Yep.
Yeah, good times. So that's
and that
how
still is on the website if people wish to experience it. It's now been transformed into a essentially go visit piece of it. That it is still, if people go to the original mooncatrescue.com site, there is a notice letting you know that this is now a historic artifact as opposed to something that's actively minting. But you can go to search the moon, and yes, which is go through that same animation and the same experience. And if you do find the proof of work solution, it does show you what that Mooncat would look like, which you cannot mint it at this time, but you can wave to it, and it has just a message from that you got to visit that Mooncat.
It so part of that for so how that spread via word of mouth as it was rediscovered amongst the at the time small vintage NFT community back then, it spread pretty quickly via word of mouth. So a lot of us decided to go rescue some Mooncats, and the rest is history. Like you said, within a day, all of those remaining, over 10,000 cats were rescued, and and I think that was also crucial, or that's crucial in a couple ways. One is that this is a fair launch or fair rediscovery in the space. So in the vintage NFT space, there's a ton of projects where people have rediscovered them, and they will take 10% or 50% of the supply for themselves, and then they'll announce it, right? And then they'll wait for the hype to come up, and then they'll just dump on everyone's heads, right? So so this is cool that it has fair distribution from the rediscovery. Again, it was the other part of it that was amazing. It was free other than gas at the time, so
sure.
It was a really fun experience. So yeah, but part of that with the fair rediscovery, fair relaunch, you could say, is that it put it in a pretty decent number of hands right from that rediscovery too, which I think was crucial in establishing a big enough community to get critical mass. So if you want to talk about your guys' experience with the rediscovery, I'd be curious to see what you guys heard or experienced too.
Sure. For myself, as I mentioned, my first experience, I was a user of it in 2017, and I did mint several, rescue several Mooncats in 2017, but then seeing that the project, wasn't catching fire necessarily, I still thought it had the potential for the future, so kind of mothballed the ones that I had. I remembered it in 2019 and thought, oh, surely this will take off soon. And I did rescue some more in 2019, but then it actually then slipped my mind for the next couple of years as I was looking more into some of the DeFi sorts of things becoming more popular and looking into the interactions there. Myself as a developer, because I had been involved with the cryptocurrencies for a long time, like the original sort of main communication hubs for those, like were the Bitcoin Talk forums, and moving into Reddit. Myself, I do have and had a Twitter account, but had mostly not made the transition like from Reddit to crypto Twitter sort of communication style, or even to Telegram at that time. So in early 2021, I was still mostly getting my crypto information from Reddit and wasn't noticing the crypto Twitter, which is actually where most of the rediscovery information happened. So myself, I didn't notice that Mooncat Rescue was being re-noticed on that Friday when it was rediscovered. I was actually looped in on, I believe it was either the Friday night or the Saturday morning, by a contact that I had made back in 2017 or 2018 from the Reddit group, and also had launched a Facebook group, which had seen similarly low traffic sort of things. But someone then posted there and repinged me as one of the few members of that Facebook group of the, hey, did you notice this project got re-noticed, which caused me to go find and search and recognize what had happened over the last 24 hours. And the fact that there was now enough people to launch a Discord, which was for me also a newer one. I was part of Discord servers, but not crypto Discord servers at the time, and launching into finding that there was now a community forming around this project. And yeah, so that weekend I mostly spent doing education pieces of I pulled up my old blog for my own self to refresh my memory on what the technicals were, and being able to answer then questions about the project and letting people know what they had, sort of a thing.
And it was kind of funny because a lot of people tell stories at this point of how Midnight was accidentally mistaken as one of the original developers and had to be like, no, guys, I'm not one of the original devs. I'm just a nerd.
Yeah, when I arrived in the Discord, what they gave me the mod authorities and labeled me as an original developer, and I'm like, oh hey, let's take back the roles that aren't actually truthful. A piece of it here, we can dial it back down to a helpful developer at this point. But then after about a month or two, I did join the team, and so then I got the roles back again. Piece of it there.
Yeah, and it's great because ETH Horde, who was one of the big people behind sort of that rediscovery, was like desperately trying to track down Jerfels, one of the original co-founders. And like Jerfels didn't have a Twitter, he wasn't on Discord, no one had his Facebook. Like they were trying to figure out through some old posts how they might possibly track down one of these two dudes. And I can't remember how he got it, but he figured out what law firm that Jerfels was working at the time, and like got in touch with Jerfels' boss and was like, hey, can you ask if your employees have anything to do with Mooncat Rescue? And sort of like got on the phone with Jerfels and was like, hey dude, your project was rediscovered. What's up?
Oh, that's awesome. They tracked him down at his IRL job.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so that actually became, so yeah, the rediscovery happened on like a Friday. So like through the weekend, the original two were found. And then like the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday was like, myself included, all had standard job, Web 2.0 jobs, or even in Jerfels' case, a law job of like recognizing of like, no, we can't be spending time in Discord servers necessarily. We have, our jobs to go to. But actually they ended up taking a couple of vacation days to be able to figure out, wait, what are we doing? What's this new thing now? And even starting the process of getting familiar with the community enough to understand that the community wished to have certainty on the Genesis Mooncat releases. And so, yeah, so that first week was more figuring out how to pause the rest of our life for a moment to recognize this thing that we did 5 years ago is now coming to fruition.
Yeah, that's really wild. I didn't know that they got tracked down in real life too. So that's definitely fun. So did you guys just kind of within the Ponderware team, did you guys just kind of hash that out amongst yourselves? Like, how did they decide kind of the plan going forward?
The original two decided they
Yeah.
did want to assist with the community that now existed and be stewards of this project. And yeah, they asked me to join as they recognized my development skills from back when I originally did the assessment of the project, and also recognizing that if this community is much larger, we need a larger team to help with that. And so, yeah, it was a part-time position for all of us to start with, but through the months of April and May to start ramping towards this being an ecosystem that we can work towards, and grew more from more team members, hired on more people to help, mostly part-time at first, and then over the course of 2021 many of the team members transitioned to being full-time, and actually allowing Ponderware as a small business to become a small business and actually have it be employees, and having the majority of us working full-time for Ponderware as an entity through the NFT community.
Which is really interesting. The Mooncat / Ponderware is the only one that I like, historic one that I know of that kind of like, I don't know, resurrected or created a legit business off the back of a rediscovered project.
Mm-hmm.
The only other ones are kind of corporate from the beginning, like Larva Labs and Yuga Labs. Those are corporate. Well, I kind of consider them corporate. I don't know how you'd consider Larva Labs, but I consider that they're a professional team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, this interesting that it's basically spawned a little enough income to support a team and developers. So, and I'm assuming that's probably a pretty satisfying job for you guys too, right?
Yes, and that became the I made the choice in early 2022 to actually recognize that Ponderware specifically, or the NFT and crypto community in general, had become stable enough as an enterprise, as an ecosystem, to quit my full-time Web 2.0 job and say that I will be now full-time into Web 3. I did that change in April of this year. And so yes, it's been a growth piece there, both seeing that Ponderware actually making a project, or making a company out of this project, as well as seeing there are other companies that are making these projects as well, that the whole cryptocurrency and NFT space, again, from my perspective of since 2012, of seeing it as, I definitely did not jump into it full time in 2012 when I first heard about Bitcoin, but I've been kind of like watching and waiting and like doing the calculus for myself as a developer of, is it mainstream enough? It's like still definitely very early, but like, is it enough to be that I can trust my main income to it, with also being, I'm a family man, I have a family, and needing to make sure I'm providing a stable income for my family. But through DeFi becoming a major thing in 2021, and NFTs becoming a thing through that summer, and then through into the current era, recognizing that, it feels to me as this is a thing to stay, and something that I can move forward with.
And one of the other things that we sort of did as a company is we definitely looked at sort of like the future of Mooncats, and sort of all got together and said, all right, on secondary sales alone, there is definitely a concern about how long-term viability Ponderware would be as a company. And so one of the things that we decided to do is we decided to sort of fork the business. And you have sort of one side of Ponderware who is working specifically on Mooncats, and that's Brooks and myself and one other person. And then you have the other half of Ponderware that is working on sort of publishing for other companies. So you have people that is like, I'm an artist, I don't know how to program, I need someone to make smart contracts for me. And so we have actually done that with a number of people now, particularly Starcade was the one that we worked on with the artist Signal Noise, James White, who is like a super popular like 80s throwback artist. And so, we we definitely love the cats, and that is definitely Brooks and I's focus. But Ponderware, in order to ensure that we stayed completely sustainable and able to continue developing for Mooncats, also does work outside of Mooncats.
Which is interesting because that was kind of their original, the way you described it, kind of the original intent was, and what I had read too, is kind of trying new things and pushing the boundaries at the time. So this allows them to continue to like play to their strengths instead of, again, if I've talked to other innovators, and the way they put it is that, they can't keep innovating if they're focused on the past, right? So it makes sense to allow other people to handle the management of that while they continue finding what the future is going to be for them too. So that makes sense.
Yeah, and finding. Oh, go ahead.
And there are many innovations that we've launched within the Mooncat ecosystem as well that they can feed off of each other as well. The accessories being, a thing that was a brand new thing of having an NFT being able to be modified in a permanent way by the current owner, being able to choose, to add a wardrobe item, or like a character skin in a video game, that once you've chosen to have it, you then have that option forever. You can turn it on or off if you wish to, but having that as a feature of an NFT, was another innovative thing that was added on as part of the process. That there's definitely more things growing in that sort of a vein, and that there's just more options across the space as well. We love exploring all the different options that are available.
And those accessories are on chain too.
Correct.
Yep. And the one that I think is super relevant right now, where you have like the 10K Club and these pre-punk ENSs, is last year we launched the Mooncat name service, which is a free ENS domain for anybody that owns a Mooncat. So if you own a Mooncat, you can go to the name service, you announce that, hey, look at my wallet, I have Mooncat 89, and you can use 89.ismymooncat.eth as your address for your wallet. And you can use it in places like the World Wide Web game and other metaverses where your ENS domain is visible.
Yeah, that's really rad. And I know that there's other stuff that you guys have been working on too in the Ponderware team. So let's talk about loot prints and the game that you guys have been developing too.
Sure. So the project Loot Prints came about shortly after the Loot for Adventures project came out, and seeing people be interested in general in that sort of imagination-inspired sort of an NFT, whereas the Loot original project was launched with a do whatever you want with it, after it's been launched, build your own stuff with it. The Ponderware team, looking for other ways to innovate on this, decided to take that similar idea of, let's take an idea of an NFT that represents something else that will be done in the future, but isn't necessarily something right now, and taking the idea of it being like a blueprint, but these are going to be many colors, just like Mooncats. So it's not a blueprint, it's a loot print, because they come in many different colors. Taking that idea of, we'll give you something that is actually going to be revealed to just be a template, like a loot print, or like a blueprint. It is a plan for something that will be created in the future. And so, somewhat in ideas of kind of like a mint pass, kind of like a something that would be revealed later, we launched this idea of every Mooncat would be given the opportunity to create their own loot print, or claim a loot print made just for that Mooncat. We know it came from that Mooncat because every loot print is the color on the opposite side of the color wheel from the cat that created it. So the color of the loot print depends on which Mooncat it was created from. And we actually had it be an open mint for any Mooncat to claim for a certain amount of time, and actually cut off the mint time. So the loot print collection is a final collection, or it is complete now, and it is a number of items that are less than the number of Mooncats. Not all Mooncats claimed their loot print, and that is now sealed. So there will be no further loot prints created for them, which also means that the numbering scheme from 0 to 25,000 is sparsely populated. Some of the numbers in there don't exist as a loot print piece there.
How many of the loot prints ended up getting claimed?
11,700.
Oh wow,
and
less than
21, I think, was the last two digits. So there is slightly less than 1 loot print per 2 Mooncats. So once loot prints are actively being used in things like the grav ball game and much down the line, the deep space exploration, not every Mooncat will be able to have a loot print.
Well, I hadn't heard this deep space exploration, and we can talk about the grav ball game too. Let's go into that. This is going to be fun.
Sure. And so the game that has been announced to be named Grav Ball or Gravity Ball is a fun extra utility being added onto Mooncats, and as a first utility for the loot print asset in addition to the Mooncat, taking that idea of the loot print is intended to be a spaceship. That this actually allows the Mooncat to travel to a playing field up in space to be able to play a game with the other fellow Mooncats. This was born of the idea of some of the community members' desire for having some sort of a staking or mechanism to lock up a Mooncat to indicate I'm not, selling the Mooncat for right now, but also something fun to do with the Mooncat while doing so. So this is what is under development right now, is creating a space for owners to voluntarily hold their Mooncat for a time, and while that Mooncat is there, they can also enter into these Grav Ball games. And the mechanism for Grav Ball is going to be somewhat more akin to an idle game of you can be actively involved and try to nudge the percentage in your favor, but also having somewhat the idea of maybe like a little bit like Dwarf Fortress of it is the Mooncat who is playing, not you, of like you are then taking on the role of coach. You put your Mooncat into the game and the Mooncat does what they want to do. You can kind of as coach give them some suggestions of what you think they should be doing, but then what the Mooncat actually does is up to them, and cats being cats, they might choose to do something completely contrarian, although hopefully that's a more rare occurrence. But the idea then of you're able to observe the game, and similar to kind of like a poker game of you can like see the odds of how it's going to be in your favor or not, and then only at the end of the match when everything, the final moment is revealed, then we can actually tell how the actual game was concluded. So it is an extra little idle game that you can be involved with, don't need to be, but just an extra thing for Mooncats to do, as something that Ponderware is able to use the loot print asset specifically for. Again, like any NFT, anyone could choose to derive information or derive usefulness out of these tools. This is one where Ponderware is adding to it of saying, oh yeah, we'll create one, and if you enjoy it, you can utilize this. If you don't have to. And if you have other ideas for what you wish to say a loot print is for, there's many. We've worked with other teams who are incorporating Mooncats into different metaverses and experiences there, and we'd love to see, how Mooncats look and act in different places, keeping as much with the lore as possible. But yeah, it's one thing that then the Ponderware team is working to add to that ecosystem as an additional option.
What are the consequences for a game? So is that recorded on chain somewhere, the results, or are you given an ERC20 token for winning, or how does that work? Are you guys still fleshing that out?
It's still partially being fleshed out. The on-chain piece has always been very important to the Ponderware team as sort of the ethos of all the projects that we create, being able to, or thinking of the very long-term future for them, of having as much be on-chain as possible, being able to give that metadata for other projects to be able to use it as they wish. And so like that idea for the Graph Ball game, the core game engine would simply indicate, who won the game, what actions took place during the game, and then being able to be hooked into by other contracts that could say, oh yeah, if we want to be a sponsor of a game and give a prize to the winning team, that could be a separate contract that looks to the game engine to say who actually won. And if the game engine also says like who was a most valuable player in that one, do we want to give an extra prize for that one? Having all that metadata be available then can inspire other contracts to be able to use it for things like, do we want a prize pool? Do we want a separate prize pool for, only blue cats that win, whatever blue cats are on the winning team might be something that would be inspired that way. So that idea of making sure that as many hooks are possible on chain, which is also, or we're also using it as a way to explore different L2 options. But again, as the Ponderware team wanting to look for the long-term stability, making sure that if an L2 is used, we want to make very certain that assets would not be at risk, that even if the L2 completely had an issue, that we can get the assets back, and that things would not be having an issue or having security risks or with bridging contracts or whatnot going from L1 to L2. So
Yeah,
it's been an exploration of a couple of those technologies.
yeah, I'm kind of the same vein that you know, I remember reading some of the bits about like Polygon, for example, and the way they were handling their multi-sig. That really scared me. And for the time being, I think it's you know, there's some technologies that sound like they're essentially permissionless. I think like off memory, I think it was like the ZK rollups, where essentially everything is still on chain, just the computation is done by other nodes. So theoretically, I believe even if the worst case that network went down, there's probably a way you could do that computation on your own to bridge it back to main chain. But overall, I think for simplicity and for the utmost security, L1 is you know, until those other technologies are proven out, is the way to go too.
Yeah, and definitely,
and
even when the ZK Sync ones, or even any of the ones that have the sort of a roll-up entry point, the another aspect of the security to be concerned about is, even if it is a roll-up, if there is like one bridging contract on L1, and like all of the assets that are in theory locked up are in one place, that is then a honeypot for hackers to try, and if they can crack that one thing, then there's a lot of assets in that one place. So we're also looking at options of some of the tools like namely Arbitrum and Layer Zero are a couple of the projects that I've been researching, ones that they're mainly sending messages through, or what the core team that manages the bridges are only sending messages through, which allows project owners to like create their own lockbox or their own main contract to just send messages across the wire, and that then spreads out the main assets, that there's not one honeypot necessarily with all of them. And also every project can choose, okay, if a message goes through saying, I want to lock this asset, and it never gets an option back, if you wanted to build in like a 1-year timeout, you know, a dead man switch sort of a thing, you could do that. If your level of comfort with the project was there, every project can choose for themselves what sort of backup or catastrophic exit plan they wish to have.
I mean, that's a great point. I mean, just distributing your risk too. Go ahead, pause.
No, yeah, and just to sort of add on to that, you know, we've sort of been looking at L2s almost a year at this point. It was something that we started doing almost as soon as I came onto the team. And it's sort of been interesting having these conversations over the last year, because some of the conversations we had with some of the earliest L2s that were really courting us was, all right, if something goes catastrophically wrong, how do we release the Mooncats? And some of the answers that we got were really alarming, because it was basically, well, that'll never happen. It's like, okay, but that is not good strategy. So we got to have something in place that if there is a problem, people can still get their Mooncats back. Mooncat ownership is super important to us. If for no other reason than you have commercial rights to your Mooncats if you own it. If your Mooncat is all of a sudden forever stuck in a contract, you no longer have commercial rights to your Mooncats. That's bad. We don't want that to happen.
Well, and other thing, we can jump into that in just a sec, but one other thing I just toss out about I didn't even think through the fact that it would all be in one smart contract, like you were saying, Brooks. But the other part is that this isn't just a theoretical vulnerability. We had what was it, like 200 million, or I don't know, it was an enormous sum that was taken out of a bridging contract for between Solana and Ethereum called Wormhole. I mean, that was drained of, I think it was close to $500 million worth of funds. I mean, that was enormous. And this was just 6 months ago or something. So, you know, and again, this was these contracts were supposedly audited and quote unquote safe, but hey, this slipped through. And again, these are big stakes. And to your point, Pause too, I know that the monetary value isn't really like super high yet for Mooncats, but like in the future, I think these are going to be, I mean, I already really value mine, but I think these are going to be extremely valuable. And people don't, I think the thing is, people don't understand how scarce these are. I mean, this is less than a single small town in a Western country for ownership across the entire world. Like there, very few people are going to be able to own a Mooncat. Again, like 26,000 max. So I don't know, it's incredibly scarce, and I just think I just don't really think people have really cottoned on to just how scarce these are. So
Yeah, it's on the one hand, people who first come to the NFT space and are greeted by, if they're first entering the NFT space now in 2022, what they see across the NFT space are a lot of ones that kind of followed the rubric of CryptoPunks of having 10,000 items, having them be, randomized and looking, vaguely humanoid for a lot of the parts, or animaloid piece there. And so then when they see Mooncats being not 10,000 but 25,000, the general perception is that we have a very large.
It's huge.
It's huge. It's more than twice the size of most of the other collections. But yet the other side of that perspective is just as you said, of compared to the world, it's not that big. And in terms of like a company trying to make a user base as well, of like, yeah, a company that only has 25,000 users is not a giant company. But also, we bring in other options for people to do aside from own a Mooncat as well, from the accessories boutique aspect as well. But that duality currently exists of the Mooncat collection is both seen as very huge and also very small, depending on which angle you're coming from.
The interesting thing is in the last couple of weeks, this concept of Mooncats are too big to succeed has really died off. I don't know. Something must have happened in the crypto space, like 250,000 items in a collection must have come out or something. I don't know, probably just a coincidence.
One thing I think, we've both been in the crypto space long enough to have recognized that there's these cycles and these bubbles and whatnot. And, kind of what I think we're going through is kind of like a PFP or a 10K collection cycle or bubble. And it reminds me a lot of like some of those old, like, remember like the masternode craze that was back in like 2017 or 2018, where, anyone could just crank it, like clone a repo and clone their, create their own masternode coin, and they, get a bunch of Bitcoin and rug pull, but I think, I think what we're going to see is over time, people are going to recognize that there is zero cost barrier to entry for new 10K PFP projects. There's unlimited, there's infinite potential supply of those. So if you're buying brand new 10K projects, unless the team like is excellent at delivering, and even if they do deliver, the market may not appreciate that. The risk that people are taking on in some of these projects is enormous. So I think we could be in for, like, if we see a correction, it could be very brutal for some of these higher cap PFP and even the low and mid cap PFP projects. So, but ultimately, I think that my view is that historic PFP, historic NFTs like Mooncats and other projects are going to be really like the store of value in the NFT space.
Well, and one of the things that I think about a lot is there's 10,000 CryptoPunks, but in reality, there's actually more like 50,000 or 60,000, because there's punks, there's V1 punks, there's V3 punks, there's Pride punks, there's funks. There isn't really sort of that type of derivative that's ever going to come out of Mooncats and see a ton of success, because a lot of those derivatives are either baked into the Mooncat ecosystem. There is equal amount of left-facing and right-facing Mooncats, or you don't need to make a secondary collection to have the same effect. There probably isn't ever going to be a fast food Mooncats collection that is successful, because why would you make another collection? You can just go to the Mooncats boutique and make your Subway visors there and get paid for that, rather than risk trying to launch a derivative collection and market it and hope for success. Your recipe for success is already there. Go to the boutique, design it, market that.
That's a great point. That's something I wanted to touch on a little bit, is that the boutique is really special in that, again, it allows, like, any user can participate in essentially in the visuals of Mooncats, which is really cool. A way to really get people to have their own, like, if they really want something that no one else has already created, they can create their own and customize it to their choosing. And to your point, and no offense to anyone that owns fast food punks. But I mean, last year when I saw those, I knew that we were in a mania of some kind when we had fast food punks, which are literally just crypto punks with like a McDonald's hat or something on them. But I remember last time I looked, I don't know, it's been a long time, but it was over 1 or 2 Ethereum a piece for the floor of like 1,000 or 10,000, whatever it was. I mean, it's just completely irrational for these cash grab copy paste projects when we have these historic, like really innovative projects in the historic space that don't have the love and the appreciation. I think we're eventually going to have, as people are going to get burned, and people are going to it's going to be a combination of people like getting burned on new projects after the hype dies out. I mean, it's just like altcoins. I mean, like you guys know, when the hype dies down and the roadmap doesn't deliver, or what it does deliver is terrible, it's a pretty fast track to zero.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see it. It definitely feels like a lot of the people who are getting on board, there is also the get rich quick or the flipper mentality, which could also be seen as in like the traditional world of like ticket scalpers or even item scalpers of, we had PS5, scalping going on of people who didn't necessarily want to have the item, but just wanted to potentially find someone else who would pay more for it. As like, I think a lot of the avatar ones are the ones that are trying to just be your avatar, who you can be. We can be your picture into your social network, or as we get the ideas of metaverses of like who you want to look like, that you can actually have a specific flavor of avatar. I think then I've even seen it myself as like we've been part of spaces and seeing like a whole bunch of Twitter users join and being able to see all their profile pictures, that it feels to me like being at a sporting event of like seeing the people who are waving their team colors. And in that sense, we have a lot of people who have, this 10,000 collection here and that 10,000 collection there and that 10,000 collection there. But a lot of people who have bought into them for similar reasons and are excited about them for similar reasons. And it feels a lot to me of like many different sports teams, each saying their team is the best, but also we're all playing the same sport. As like, and yeah, there can be friendly rivalries, and we can get together and see, you're rooting for that team and I'm rooting for that team, but we're having fun at a sporting event together, sort of a thing. And I do think there might be a niche for that sort of mentality into the future of, even if a laundry list of 10,000 item collections don't individually become extremely popular, if just like one team becoming popular because they won the Super Bowl, I think having the different teams might still continue, but it would require the people who are actually in it because they like the camaraderie, because they like the community, because they like being part of that specific 10,000 item group, which might actually be a few thousand club members, or even the wider NFT space. And yeah, interesting to see of once the people who are mainly in it to try and flip are successfully out, like the idea of if you got ticket scalpers, once you actually enter the event venue, all the ticket scalpers are on the outside trying to scalp their tickets. As it's interesting to me to think about the NFT future of once we get like into the event venue, once the people who have the NFTs are doing what they want to with the NFTs, what will that look like? I think we're still very much milling on the outside of the event saying, we've all got these cool tickets to all these cool roadmap things. What do we want to do with it? And yeah, it'll take several years to figure out what is actually going to shake out to be.
That's what I love about the vintage space, though, is that you guys are delivering a lot of cool new features, but at the end of the day, the the value is really the history and the again, this is an innovative project. I remember like I bought my CryptoPunk in large part because I was ignorant. At the time I thought that the narrative was at the time, and this was on Opensea too, is that CryptoPunks are the first NFT, right? So like,
Yep, they effectively marketed that.
They sure did.
They did a very good job marketing that.
So, but yeah, I mean, to your point though, I think like a large part of, I think like Bored Apes is an example of that, where I think a lot of that has to be like the social management or community management that, because the art is what it is, whether you like it or not. But I don't think the art is significant enough to have driven this type of uptake. I think they've done a really great job at community management and building their brand, and you have to give them credit for that. Again, long term, will that sustain? Because the other way I look at that is, it only takes one or two missteps for, for that to potentially turn sour too, right? So
Hmm.
I remember last summer, one of the things that we were combating a lot on Twitter was this idea of ETH Lambos are older than X, Y, and Z project because they had a Twitter first. And it was like, well, okay, that is a stance you can take. That was like a community stance, and like the team behind ETH Lambos is like never really pushed that. But it was sort of interesting to see that like the community had glommed onto this idea of we're first because and it didn't really stick, so they eventually abandoned it. But like it is so interesting to see these communities sort of build up their messaging inside of the crypto space, and which ones sort of stand up to the scrutiny of people outside of those communities, and which ones definitely like drop out, and it's like, no, we're not really going to pursue this anymore.
it's interesting. I remember one of the things I thought was interesting is seeing the Funks community basically tried to get a bunch of press by being super toxic and attacking people. I think it was earlier this year, and that and that basically died out. But one one of the things I've tried to do is it's okay for all these communities to have their own strengths and niches and that thing, but I want overall the historic NFT community to be collaborative and cooperative, and have have a healthy ecosystem where everyone can win. Like it's not
Yes.
like just because one project did something first or is earlier doesn't mean that these other projects aren't significant too, right? So I don't know. There's room for everyone in the space, so we don't
Yeah.
have to try and tear each other down.
We love working with other historical NFTs. We've done a whole bunch of like Twitter spaces with other historical NFTs. We did a Decentraland gear drop recently with Curio cards and Pixel Map and Mooncats together. So if you owned any of those projects, you would get gear sort of inspired by those projects. And it's great because the Mooncats one has like a little Mooncat that hovers over your shoulder. It's absolutely adorable. We did a Twitter Spaces not that long ago with Crypto Skulls. We did one with 2017 lunar plots, which came out in October of 2017. And a lot of these times when we work with these other historical NFTs, one of the things that we do is sort of memorialize them on the blockchain through the Mooncats boutique. So if you owned both a lunar plot and a Mooncat at the time we took a snapshot a couple months ago, you would be eligible to grab an accessory that only people that owned those two projects at that point in time will ever have access to. And so we love the idea of like a rising tide lifts all boats. We definitely, have pretty strong feelings that historical NFTs succeed together. And that is something that we love. It's one of the reasons why we love collaborating with other historicals. But White Rabbit, 1111 in particular, talks a lot about the fact that there's maybe 20 projects from 2017. Not all of those are actually ones that can be moved into the modern NFT space. And there will never be more 2017 projects. There just wasn't many that came out that year. And so Mooncats being in that very tiny cohort is something that is immutable and unchangeable, and something that we're really proud of.
Yeah,
And that piece of from the technology space of that the definition of NFT is really, really broad. Like to the lowest common denominator of what is an NFT is just that, the tracking of ownership and that history that can be audited. And so that leaves it wide open of lots of things can be NFTs. And that space of then there's lots of ways where each project can have their thing that they do different and unique and can be a special unique thing that they've added to the ecosystem. And I think celebrating each project's contributions. Right now, I think there's also been a emphasis on trying to like label what they all are. Of like, is it a generative NFT? Is it a, how on chain is on chain enough? Is it, those sorts of things? And also like, is it the first XYZ label, sort of a thing or not? I think we sometimes get caught up too much in trying to label it as the thing, be able to say, oh yeah, these two things are similar. They do these things that are similar, but they also do these things that are different. And it was cool that they did them in a different way. They both innovated in a slightly different way. Piece of it.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And I mean, we say we're the first cat NFT, but it is more, we're the first cat NFT, we think.
Yeah, exactly. You know, that's so funny because there's been so many people claiming first, and then, you know, over the course of these further digging and rediscoveries, there's, you know, more and more stuff has popped up. I think we've got to be getting close though to the rediscoveries though on Ethereum and Counterparty and even Namecoin. I think we've got to be pretty close to it. And Namecoin is as old as it gets for a system that can support NFTs as we know it, right?
And it can also be of, you know, yourself as a collector or investor. Each individual person could say, you know, like what I personally consider an NFT, you know, could consider something even further back of, you know, the original Bitcoin client had the idea of colored coins, that there were some groups who were trying to, you know, make every individual Satoshi in a set, you know, mean something. It's like there have been, you know, like some sort of grids of like when you say NFT, you know, do you mean, you know, ownership? Do you mean transferability? Do you mean, you know, these sorts of things? And it's fine for each individual collector to latch onto a separate thing. And yet right now the being hooked on labels is perhaps something that's hard to get all on the same page about. But also like if you find something further back that is interesting to you, go for it and be interested in it. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's sort of fascinating because even the concept of what is a historical or vintage NFT is something that has been continuing to evolve over the last year. And it's sort of interesting seeing sort of these conversations happening in the Mooncat space because, you know, there are proponents of if it existed before the ERC 721 standard, all right, that's a historical NFT, nothing else is. There are other people that it's like, well, if it predates something large like the Bored Apes Yacht Club, that's historical. And so like with these super malleable definitions that there is no definitive label of, I can point to that thing and that is the definitive truth. These conversations just need to mature.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the one point I take is that I really don't like people that, or I don't like the idea of people trying to misrepresent things to people that are less knowledgeable or just entering the space. Again, I mean, that's one thing I'm trying to, you know, I'd really like to see the historic space like keep everyone honest, because it's, you know, there's a lot of money here, and people can. It's just like altcoins. You can take advantage of people and do a pump and dump or what have you, you know, just take advantage of their lesser knowledge of the space. But I don't think that's ethical. I don't think that's the right thing to do. So that's all I'd say is that, yeah, I mean, it like value, like ultimately value is subjective, right? And like you were saying, you know, what do you consider historical is really a determination for you. But I'd just say you need to be upfront in what you're, you know, if you're doing a pump and dump or if you're carrying bags, you need to be upfront about that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah, and I think that as the crypto space matures, we will see a little bit more accountability for that stuff. At the moment, the sort of long-term memory of the crypto space is, you know, 4 or 5 days, and then it's all that's history. Like we don't have to worry about that anymore. But yeah, it's sort of a tricky as like Ponderware's, you know, values and stances is like we would rather err on the side of slow and steady and like being ethical even in an inherently unethical space. You know, sometimes that can be really challenging because there is a lot of pressure to acting unethically can often make you a lot of money, and acting ethically can sometimes hold you back from making money. And straddling that line of resisting the urge to give in to the easy bucks is sometimes really hard. But the nice thing about being a historical project is, you know, we don't have to worry as much about whether we're relevant today because we're always going to be relevant in the future.
yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is that you only really have, especially in crypto space, you only really have one shot with your integrity. If you blow that, then it's over, right? Because it's with social media and the space as it is. I mean, the memory doesn't end anymore, right? The record is permanent now. So if you pull some shenanigans, it's out there. Whether it catches up with you today or not is I don't know. I wouldn't say irrelevant, but it will catch. I think it'll catch up with you. So I think that's smart. I mean, again, fair play to and hats off to the founders to even bringing up the Genesis destruction for a vote. I remember when that happened, but they didn't even have to bring that up for a vote. They could have just been like, hey, like we lost all of our funding from this project. Like, here's how we're going to structure an auction or something. They could have done a Dutch auction or what have you. But I mean, that was, again, that, they really went against their own self-interest for the sake of the project to allow the community to have a say. And that's really awesome, so it speaks to the integrity of, the founders and the project going forward. I think that'll always be reflected in the history and ultimately, I think, value and long-term, the projects that have never rugged or never done anything malicious to their users. That's something I really look for.
Sure.
And I mean,
and I think
oh, go ahead.
Sure. I think on your point of like straddling the line between where people are ethically is also that seeing the history of the cryptocurrency space, that there is also that vein of kind of libertarian or piece of like pushing beyond open source and trustlessness to permissionlessness of like anyone's allowed to do anything piece of it, and sort of there is some factors of the community that are trying to push towards the if the code allows you to do it, go ahead and do it sort of a thing, as sort of a personality, is also, I think, there from the origins of that space, and that finding that balance between open source and you can build things, but that there is also rules that are being set in place, and you can set the rules of how you're wanting the tone of things to progress.
I guess I'd throw out one more thing on the subject and we can move on. But I think it's important for people who weren't around at the time to have the context that when Mooncats were launched in 2017, the crypto space was full of just flagrant scams. I mean, just all over the place. Just, we laugh on it now, but it was bad, just, you could go back on the old BTC Bitcoin Talk announcements and, there's just, that's a good idea to actually go look at that. I bet it'd be funny now, but just all of that.
And that's coming off of the ICO boom piece of it. And that was actually one of the jokes in the Mooncat Rescue project that the original founders tried to work in, and they realized was a joke that was a little bit too subtle for most people to catch going through it. Of yes, in that era of when the CryptoPunks were launching, it was right as the ICO boom was happening as well, of recognizing those initial coin offerings were promising the moon, but then not necessarily needing to deliver on those. The original Mooncat Rescue was described as an insanely cute operation.
Oh,
ICO.
An ICO. Yes.
So yes, they were launching an ICO. They were launching an insanely cute operation to go rescue the Mooncats. And the point being that yes, they did actually have a project, or that it did have completion of what it was supposed to be doing. The entire contract had the ability to rescue and the ability to have a marketplace built into it. It was not just vaporware. Here's the thing: it's our ICO. Our insanely cute operation.
And it wasn't a scam too. Again, that was my point, is that there's just flagrant scams and hucksters, and it goes up and down the line. So yeah, hats off to that. But that I didn't catch that. So that's a great detail.
Yep.
But I did before we miss it though, I wanted to ask for a little bit more information about this deep space exploration bit.
Sure, and that's been the idea of gamification of things, and the utility that you can do with your Mooncats. We've had several ideas internally as a team, that those have then become part of what we list as the roadmap, and as they're more nebulous, they are more lore filled as more possibilities, mainly as ways to see sentiment shift in the community of if we put something out as a, oh yeah, we could do something that's, along the lines of an ENS something. If people pick up on that, then yeah, then that moves up in our priority list. And the deep space idea has been another sort of gamification option, a more involved thing that the Grav Ball piece kind of evolved as it was originally intended as kind of a smaller, lighter weight, more fun thing to do as we're working on some of the larger projects. And indeed, our ideas for deep space are much bigger piece of it there, and it has been kind of a longer term in more gamification, more utility, more socializing options within the Mooncat ecosystem.
Wow, I could even see that being like some like space metaverse. Yeah, good times. Okay. Well, one thing that I wanted to touch on too is the rights that owners have in Mooncat. So one of the things that we've seen kind of come up, over the past year is people have been talking about, and there's been different trends in ownership rights for NFT holders. So originally with CryptoPunks, you had almost no rights initially. I mean, essentially Larva Labs retained commercial and I don't know, pretty much any rights. You only had the right to use your CryptoPunk in a non-commercial sense, right? And you can you're limited there. But we've seen the emergence of other licensed schemes like CCO, where basically it's kind of Wild West.
Public domain. Yep.
Yeah. Would you like to kind of talk about like the approach that Mooncats took with their licensing?
Should I dive into that?
Sure.
All right. So on the two extreme sides, you do have the Creative Commons, which is sort of like crypto to the Mona Lisa, where anybody can do anything with the artwork. There's no one to ask permission to do it with. So if you want to put Mona Lisa on a mug or a cryptoad on a shirt, you can totally do so. No problems at all. On the other side of it, you have things like Larva Labs and the Starcade project, where you have sort of a pretty limited lane of personal use for your NFT, but no commercial rights to it. And then there's sort of this real broad gray area in the middle where Mooncats and a lot of other NFTs sit. And the way that the rights for the Mooncats work is while you own your Mooncat, you have full commercial and non-commercial rights to your Mooncats. So if you want to slap a Mooncat on a shirt for yourself, 100% do it. If you want to slap a Mooncat on a shirt and give it away to your 50 closest friends, 100% thumbs up, go do it. If you want to put your Mooncat on a shirt and make a storefront like Acid Man did and sell your Mooncats on shirts to everybody in the world, 100%, two enthusiastic thumbs up, go do it. You can commercialize your Mooncat in any way that you want. There's like a really narrow window of things that we ask you not to do, which is basically don't damage the Mooncats collection as a whole. So like, if you have a fans of Mussolini club, we would ask you not to use your Mooncat as the mascot for that particular business endeavor. But other than that, I mean, you can commercialize your Mooncat. You can make it a logo for your company, put it on shirts, put it on bugs, fly it on banners over LA. Anything you want to do with the Mooncat to raise the profile of that Mooncat or the collection as a whole, two enthusiastic thumbs up. When you sell your Mooncat, you have to stop doing that because the Mooncat doesn't belong to you anymore.
Okay, that makes sense. And have you actually had to ask anyone to desist from doing anything with their particular Mooncat that was too extreme? Because
Nope.
I haven't heard of that. Yeah.
Nope. Honestly, we are pretty permissive in terms of what we let people do. Really, the only time we've ever had to step in as sort of like curators of the Mooncat collection as a whole is we had one Mooncat with like a wildly inappropriate name. And so we just made it so that you can't see that name anymore.
Oh, geez.
I will assure you that it was wildly inappropriate. It was not something that we did lightly. We had a lot of internal conversation about it.
I didn't even think about someone like trolling on chain with their own Mooncat, but I guess you can do it. So,
Yep. If you really want to name yourself, name your Mooncat something that is really, really not good. You can do that, although I don't really think you would want to, because it would damage the long-term
Yeah, I mean,
value of that
Health of
Mooncat.
that asset.
yeah,
Yes.
it goes against your own economic interests, really.
Yes. And in general, the fact that if you do these things, they are permanent choices, and you are therefore maybe not making the best choice for a long-term valuable asset, has generally kept people from doing like wildly crazy things. And that's working as intended.
Well, and I guess to that point, you know, I know that these aren't super valuable right now, but I think that we're almost like caretakers to an extent with these things. These are super scarce, whether people get it or not. And, I don't know, there's such a small supply of these, pre 2018, 2019 projects, that, so, I mean, that's why I really don't like to see assets like that get burned or destroyed, because there's already a finite supply, and it's through lost wallets and whatnot, it's only going to get smaller. So we don't need to go out of our way to destroy more, right?
Right. And also, like, we even as a community have helped with like some of the education topics of helping people get in the proper mindset of, hey, this asset that you are now the curator of will probably be around longer than you will. Of like, do you have plans for passing this on to your children? Of like, this Mooncat will outlive you. Is a we had a space about that with the crypto skulls as a slightly morbid thought to think about the longevity. We as humans normally, when we have our pets, recognize that our pets are usually shorter lived than us for most cases. But like, this is a situation where the thing we're getting, if we treat it well so that we don't lose it, it should last longer than us. And are we actually in that mindset and preparing to, even though we are early and it is new and it is a space that doesn't have a whole lot of experience, one of the things that you could be thinking about is, how will you help ensure the longevity of this thing that you are now the curator of?
And we are definitely going to have to repeat that Twitter Spaces that we did about, passing your Mooncats on to the next generation, because it is something that people have gotten really interested in, even in the past couple of months, of like, oh my gosh, they look at sort of the value of assets in the crypto space as a whole and realize that, hey, Mooncats are perfectly positioned to be one of these very high value assets in the crypto space. I should probably maybe not keep them on a hot wallet anymore. I don't even know how to buy a ledger. What is a ledger? And so we've definitely been answering an increasing number of questions around security and long-term safety. And so probably going to have another presentation around maintaining those assets in the nearest future.
Yeah, that's great. That's one thing I helped write for the Curio Cards community as a write up on security best practices and how to use a hardware wallet for your NFTs, because there's been so many people have lost assets, whether there's so many easy ways to lose your assets with a hot wallet, whether you're the whole idea that you're trusting your valuable NFTs to a Windows based or a phone, which can easily be hacked by any number of ways, or it can just be burn up, right? If you didn't back it up, if that computer crashes. Anyway, so yeah, I agree. Like, getting people to think about it in the right way and not lose their assets because of a computer crash or getting hacked or whatnot is really important. I did want to bring up too. So I know that you purchased a cat through the NFT 20 pool, right?
Yeah. So one of the things that I did, I was very crafty, is when the team hired me, I negotiated a Mooncat as a signing bonus. And so when we sort of hit that point of like, all right, you have been with the team long enough that you will actually get a Mooncat from us, they handed me 100 MCAT 20 and said, all right, as part of, community management, you should know what it is like to buy a Mooncat. And I was like, heck yeah. And so I went to a liquidity pool and I looked at all the Mooncats that were there and I picked one and I paid for it with a token. And then, it was a Mooncat that was in the old unofficial wrapper. So then I got the experience of moving it from that old wrapper into the official acclimated wrapper and then buying my very first accessory for it. And so that was sort of a novel experience for me because I had no idea that NFTs could be like that. And I'm so glad that the team sort of ended up doing that with me. And I was like 100% on board for this, but it was really fun. One of the cool things about Mooncats is there are a couple of different websites that you can go to, NFT20 and NFTX, where there are these liquidity pools that make your non-fungible token a little more fungible. And sort of the idea is of, how did you explain this, Brooks? We have decided as a group that all of these cats are worth approximately the same amount.
Mm-hmm. And that, yeah, for generic liquidity pools, that generally means the floor price of them. But also a pool can say, it's only going to admit ones with a certain property to it. And indeed, the Mooncat community created one recently of recognizing that they wished a particular trait, a particular ones that were rescued in a particular calendar year, 2017, the first year in this case, to be able to say, oh, let's make a separate pool over here. So we have a general pool of, hey, all of these things are Mooncats. That may be the only thing that is unique about them, but they're at least all Mooncats. Versus this other pool over here is they're all Mooncats that were rescued in the year 2017. And you can get more and more specific if you wish to spin up additional pools. But that idea of, hey, if yes, they are distinct in that they are each individual NFTs, which means they have to have something that it makes them either slightly more or less different. But if you're saying, oh, they're generally close enough that we want to call them to having one similar rate, having a pool of them is what these NFT20 and NFTX sort of projects allow to happen, and can happen with any of the NFT collections, to make a fungible pool of NFTs that are generally the same or perceived to be the same value to the community, and then can be all lumped together into one representation.
Yeah, and kind of the purpose of that is, or one of the purposes of that is that it allows holders of that aren't emotionally attached to their particular cat. They can deposit it into that pool, and they can essentially get yield from that. Kind of like with DeFi, you're taking on a little bit of risks for you can suffer losses if it swings too rapidly up or down, but if it stays relatively stable, then you can earn yield on your NFT, which is a really cool concept.
Yep, you can invest in the concept of the project without necessarily owning the individual assets from it. Yeah, is one of the ways that those pools can be used, which helps investors in that sort of a mindset. And also the like the way that the Pondware team used it for Paws, of using it essentially as a gift card, of saying, we wish to gift you one of these assets, and we want this redeemable thing to always be worth one of these assets, regardless of if the floor price fluctuates. If you're holding the token that says this is one of them from the pool, and even if you wish to hold on to it and say like, oh, the current options in the pool, none of them are to my liking, I'll just wait, you can do so and know with confidence you can always redeem those tokens for something from the pool, and the pool could never be completely drained as long as you hold on to those assets.
Yeah, and that's it. Go ahead.
Really savvy shoppers have started to sort of monitor the pools for sort of interesting deposits. There was someone the other day who was so excited because they found a pink panther in one of the pools. Last week or the week before, someone went to the NFTX pool and it actually had their Mooncat's twin in the pool, and they were able to pull it out. And so being able to unite people with their perfect Mooncat through the pools has been a very cool thing to watch.
Mm-hmm. There is the possibility for, even if the market forces say all of these are worth the same, it's very likely that you would look at that collection and say like, well, no, I find that one to be slightly cooler than all the rest in the set, of like, I want that one piece of it there. And if that, there is a one individual one that for you is valued higher than the price of the pool, there's an opportunity for you as an investor or collector to grab the one that you think is more useful or valuable to you.
I actually had a conversation right before this podcast started recording for someone that they wanted to get a gutter garf. And we ended up finding a twin pair that one was in one of the NFTX pools and the other one was in the NFT 20 pool. And they have since rescued both of them and are so excited because they have this super cute pair of gutter Garfield twin Mooncats now.
That's awesome. I love, by the way, I really love that term gutter Garfield. That's great.
I did not come up with that. All credit to the community for deciding that, these patchy orange Mooncats were going to be, the second tier of Garfields, still lovable, but not quite tabbies.
I have to admit that, I still hold my cats that I rescued, and I'm a terrible trader, and I could have sold them for more, or I could have whatever, but I recognize that I'm not really a great trader, so and I'm kind of emotionally attached to them since I rescued them, so I really don't have any plans to get rid of them unless I absolutely need to. So, I imagine there's probably and one of the things that I see happening in some of these collections as we get more passionate people come in, is I think we're going to have more and more of the supply get locked up in people's hands that they don't really have an intent to sell ever, right? And again, like you were saying, Brooks, is it's that migration from flippers, people who are just strictly here for price appreciation, to people who like really love the assets, right? And that those are much stronger hands that'll over time is just going to shrink the available supply on the market.
And I mean, and I've even seen it's not necessarily just the assets that are most valuable as well, of finding the people who like the thing for what it is like, and what it is might be something that's very niche. Of like, I've been seeing the POAP project, which is very cheap. Most all POAPs you can get for just attending a thing. So in theory, it costs you nothing to attain the POAPs. But a lot of the people who I've seen who then have them have no intention of like even trying to sell them or trying to market them, because they like them as the proof that indeed they did do the thing. And it's like, for them, there is high value to it, even though it's a free or very low cost item, but they like it for what it represents. The people who actually are enjoying POAPs because of it shows that they attended a thing are very much enjoying them, even though they're a free or very low cost item. And I think that's a great thing to see.
Our social media coordinator, Tusk, owns the Mooncat with rarity 25,440. It is the absolute bottom of the barrel, least rare Mooncat in the entire collection. And he is
like the rarity
so
tool
proud
scoring.
of that. He is like, this is my Mooncat, and you will pry that Mooncat from my cold dead hands.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, none of my cats are super rare. I mean, again, they were all 2021 Mooncats that I rescued, but to me, they're more valuable than just going out on the market and buying one. So, again, why would I ever sell my Mooncats if I didn't have to, right? So
that you were the personal one who did so, yeah, and that piece of having a part of their history, I think is a wonderful part to have as part of the project.
I have a spotted orange gutter garf, and her name is Charmander. I did not name her, but I bought her, one, because her name is Charmander, and two, because her price was $69,420.
Oh, nice. Well, I also wanted to say too, on your story too, that's such a great example of of them being able to give you essentially credit to pick out the Mooncat that you wanted directly. Instead of them just gifting you a Mooncat, you're able to go in and pick exactly what you wanted.
Yep. And my profile picture, Mooncat, is like a super generic Flora Mooncat. There is nothing particularly special about them. They are a laying, two-toned blue shy Mooncat that is like completely generic floor. And I will never let that Mooncat go. It has a Ponderwear visor. It's got like a one-of-one accessory that I had Digivitar design for it. It's like these huge wings and like a little heart over the head, and it is amazing. And I don't care what, how much money you throw at me for that Mooncat. It is my Mooncat. You will never get it from me.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that people like us, over time, I mean, again, with less than 30,000 available, I mean, there's the way I look at it is there's way more than 30,000 nerds or however you want to put it, right? Maybe I don't mean that in pejorative, but there's more than enough collectors out there that once they see these and they recognize them, they're going to want to have at least one, and they're like it's they'll form, I don't know, at least for me, like I said, I'm a little bit emotionally attached to mine. So, and like you said, Tusk, he's not letting go of his, and I'm sure, like, for you, Brooks, you have some special ones too, right?
Indeed. And like, yeah, for myself, the things that I looked at while I was minting, I like blue. And so, yes, a lot of the ones that I rescued were blue. But also as a developer and recognizing that the the hexadecimal identifier for the Mooncat, which in the contract is actually how it derives the appearance and the colors, I actually was very interested from the number perspective of like what the numbers are. And so I actually was going for some of the Mooncats that have from the hexadecimal ranges, which can go from 0 to 255, finding ones that were at those two extremes. So I have a few Mooncats that, in terms of what their color is it's the brightest color possible that the random number generator could create. And actually, now that the Mooncat Acclimator uses those colors as part of the Mooncat's glow. So I actually have the Mooncat, which if you're looking solely at the glows, would be the whitest glow out of the collection piece of it, which is something that wasn't necessarily evident by the rescuing process, and is something that is now as a trait is just a more minor thing mentioned as a glow, but I think is really cool. And I'm holding on to, I have both the brightest glow and the darkest glow. And I gave the one with the brightest glow angel wings and the one with the darkest glow a volcano background, and to have them as the yin and yang set to keep there. And that piece of being able to like grow them of like, yeah, that pair, even though the community decided on ideas of like what is a twin versus what is a clone, for me, though, that's a twin, even though they're radically different colors, piece of it. But that for me, they go together. And so that I will keep them as a set. And that then I can be part of that story of, for people who care, can actually tell that those two are related in that way. And also the idea of, like, as Paws mentioned, of being able to like commission an artist to make an accessory to match your style. Mooncats can only be named once, but also that idea of, well, if you wanted to make an accessory, you could have an artist create an accessory that is only within the boutique ecosystem. We allow the creator of the accessory to set how many there are. And so, yes, you can, as an accessory creator, say there will only be one of them. And now you've essentially created a unique piece of artwork. And as soon as that's bound to one Mooncat, it cannot be moved to another Mooncat. So now you have made the combination of this Mooncat with this art piece is now a completely unique creation. And so, yes, if you took something that the rest of the market might consider common and being able to say, well, no, I wish to make it my own, make it unique, make it, a part of me. There's definitely ways to say, now this is a one of one and will always be now a one of one into its future.
And
So
while we in general caution that like buying an accessory does not add a specific value to your Mooncats, there has definitely been sort of a subset of buyers that are like, all right, I missed the Crypto Skull accessory. I wasn't around when the McDonald's hat sold out. I couldn't afford a mecha kaiju at the time. Now I'm interested in having those. The only way to get those accessories is to buy a Mooncat that already owns them. And so as the project continues to grow and more of these accessories are made, there is definitely going to be a niche even within Mooncats that is like, I am looking for a Mooncat that has McDonald's fries. What is the value of those on the market today?
Yeah, that's great. And the other thing I was thinking too, as you were describing that, is not just the accessories having value. I've seen those mecha ones, and those are sick looking. I'd love to get one of those.
Yeah.
I have
but,
a mecha Ghidorah on my profile pic Mooncat that I take into the World Wide Web metaverse, and every time I do, people are like, "Where did you get that? What NFT is that? It's so amazing!" And it's like, "Haha, this is a Mooncat."
Looks like a multi-headed dragon. It's actually a Mooncat. Piloted by, yeah.
what I was thinking is not just the accessories giving value, long term. And again, like speaking of it, I do want to get one of those mecha ones because those are super sick. But one thing I was just thinking is that we may see over time a premium develop for unnamed Mooncats over named Mooncats because, as you said, Brooks, they can only be named once. You can't rename them.
Mm-hmm.
So people that named them before have basically taken away the opportunity for a new owner to name them. So what value will people put in the future on being able to permanently name their cat, right?
Yeah, it includes naming rights. If you purchase this particular one, if you become the new owner, the new adopted owner of this one, you get the naming rights to this one as well. Yeah.
And it's interesting because on the other side of the coin, there are some Mooncats that have an added value because of the prestige of their name. So Mr. Moo, on top of being the 7th Mooncat ever minted, so he's mint number 6, he was the first ever named Mooncat. And like there is a big prestige behind that. Melancholia is Mooncat number 40. Mr. Whiskers is Mooncat number 39. If you spend enough time in the Mooncats community, you're going to sort of start to hear a lot of these like really early named Mooncats that the value of them is that they're named.
And they're identifiable by that name. They're known. They're
No,
known by their name as well as their mint order, or their rescue order for within this collection. But yeah, that they've now gotten their own persona of their name. And so like, yeah, there's that duality of if they've been around long enough that they were originally named by their original rescuers, perhaps many years ago, that yeah, there is now the name has a history, and therefore they have a reputation and a persona beyond just a number.
Yeah, Baki Pooba has named almost every single Mooncat that they have owned, including Princess Leia Peach. And like those Mooncats are novel because they were named by Baki Pooba.
Yeah, so because even anyone who has an unnamed Mooncat, they could still name it the same, but it's not going to be the one that everyone associates with, like Mr. Whiskers, or anyway, that's interesting.
Yep.
There's so many levels to the collecting and gamification of this.
I'd say, and the one other piece of being a part of the history of an item, whether of a Mooncat, whether you name it, whether you add the accessory to it, I think we also saw like somewhat to the idea of the derivatives that were the flipped NFTs, or the ones that were just adding fast food hats to them. We then saw an era where there was kind of the suits on era of like a lot of the collections went into a temporary mode of putting on a suit. That was around the Sotheby's sorts of auctions when Christie's and Sotheby's were doing their first NFT sales. There was kind of the general movement of like, oh, let's let the NFTs get dressed up for this fancy event. And a lot of NFTs or some collections got some sort of a template that you could overlay, and then your NFT looked like it was wearing a suit. Whereas with Mooncats, you actually can buy a suit, and then that Mooncat can use that suit forever. And so actually being part of when the Mooncats indeed did a Suits On for Sotheby's moment, and here is a moment in time that we wish to be part of. Yes, you can get an accessory. We actually called for several of the accessory owners who wished to either design suits, or if you already had a suit designed, or top hats, or various things, to be advertising those. And then we actually had a photograph kind of generated of all the Mooncats that wish to be wearing suits at that moment, to be in that moment in time. And we actually did mint that as a separate NFT. Now any Mooncat who wishes to could put on a suit, if they want to be part of a more formal moment in the future, but also that we could snapshot that moment in time as literally a moment. We call them Mooncat moments, as a photograph of that event in time, and being able to show these Mooncats were part of this moment in time. And if you were an owner that chose to put on a suit and be part of that, you were then part of that history.
And if you didn't think Mooncats were multi-layered enough, acclimated Mooncats are actually ERC 998 compliant, which means they can own other NFTs. So when we create Mooncat moments, which are generally pulling down a snapshot of, all right, on this date, the on-chain data says these 100 Mooncats owned accessory Y. when we create sort of that picture of all of those Mooncats together and sort of like mint that moment, we actually airdrop it directly to the Mooncat.
Not to the address that owns the Mooncat, to the Mooncat itself.
Yep.
That's wild. I didn't know that.
Then whoever is the owner can technically pull it out. Currently, it's a contract interaction. We're working on nicer UIs to be able to do so. But yeah, that method of distribution of usually there is some sort of a lag between when we choose to take the snapshot moment of who owned the accessory and actually generating the nice graphic for it. And so even if Mooncats have changed hands in that gap time, when the moment gets delivered, it gets delivered to the Mooncat that's in the photo, the Mooncat itself. And if it has changed hands, that doesn't need to be tracked because it's going to the Mooncat, not to who owned it at the time of the snapshot.
That's cool. I had a quick question about the accessories too. So is there some sort of like moderation process, or does anyone just immediately mint to the chain directly for the accessories? Is there some sort of review process?
Both.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
when you mint a Mooncat accessory, you are minting an on-chain thing. And so at that point, it is 100% on-chain. We can't take it back. It is there for good. But what we do is as the sort of curators of the Mooncats boutique, once a week, we look through the accessories that have been created and go, all right, these are sort of the guidelines of the small number of things that we will not verify, which means they will not show up in metaverses like World Wide Web, and they will not show up on marketplaces like OpenSea and LooksRare. And it's pretty much like, have you made an identical piece to an NFT where it could be easily confused as that NFT? Have you made something that's adult oriented? So there is actually a ball gag for Mooncats, and we just don't show that on marketplaces. If you want to buy it, you can go buy it, but it won't show up anywhere except for the Poto booth. There is also sort of a really narrow set of accessories that we consider deceptive. So if you are creating an accessory that changes your Mooncat into a black and white palette, those we don't verify, because we don't want you buying a Mooncat that you think is a Genesis that is in fact just a generic Flora Mooncat. So providing that you don't fall into those three buckets, we verify your accessory and it will be visible on marketplaces and on metaverses, and will show up on the boutique through the regular sort of interface. You can on the boutique find some items that we say these aren't going to be verified because they fall into two of the three buckets. It's adult oriented, or we feel it may be confused with another NFT. That third bucket of, no, this makes your Mooncat look like a Genesis and we just don't vibe with that. If you really want to buy those, you can, but it does require a manual contract interaction, because we want people to understand that like these things are never going to be approved. We just know. If you really are going to make the strong effort to go out and get them, you have to understand that those are things that we will never approve.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm glad you have some sort of process in place. I mean, that would be super messed up for someone to accidentally buy what they think is a Genesis cat and get roped that way. I was thinking the other angle I was thinking is, we were talking about like the mechs and the McDonald's fries and some of these other ones that are limited run, is how you prevent someone from just essentially copy pasting and creating another one, but that review process basically keeps it that way.
So there's actually a safeguard built into the boutique accessory designer itself that you cannot create two identical or near identical items.
Oh, cool.
And I don't want to go into the process like super deeply, because I feel like that's just going to encourage people to circumvent it. But yeah, in general, you cannot make two readily identical items.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, yeah, that's definitely cool. I think that like you said, some of these those limited and early ones I can't see them not having a little bit more value than just a floor cat long term. Like I said, I want to get one of those mecha ones, because every time I see them, I'm like, oh yeah, those are so dope. How many of those did they issue?
Kind of varies from mech to mech. So there's
Okay.
basically 4 or 5 artists that have done sort of like mech accessories as an umbrella term. And so in terms of availability, I don't think there's any mech that goes above 50, and some of the rarest ones were as little as 10.
Okay. Wow, that's really scarce.
And 10 out of 19,000. It's rare.
Rare
Yeah.
to see those ones walking around. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, so on the community front, is there any initiatives or anything that that you're working on or you want to talk about, Paz?
Yeah. One of the things that we have been doing particularly lately is sort of stepping up how we codify getting feedback from the community. So about a month ago, we dropped into the Gravball channel a pretty extensive write-up that was like, all right, guys, here are our 3 options in terms of making a reward for Gravball. We can make our own token. We can use an existing token. We can tie it to something like an existing ERC20 stablecoin like DAI. And alongside that, we basically gave people a write up of like, all right, so here is how ERC20s for other projects have gone. They get released, they go pretty high, they crash out to below mint price, and then they stabilize after a point. And so we let people sort of have really open discussion on like, what do you guys want to see in terms of a token, understanding that if we make our own, this is the behavior we expected to have. And so that was great. We had a lot of really good, vigorous discussions on our Discord. Another thing that we just finished is we did a sentiment vote around accessories, where we really wanted to see where the broader community felt about accessories being visible by default in metaverses and marketplaces. And so on Monday the 9th, we are actually going to have a call with our Discord members and sort of go over the results of that vote. But we are planning to have sort of snapshot votes like that about once a month moving forward. We are very keen on collecting sort of like that community sentiment from people around some of these more contentious issues where like there is not a clear sentiment across everybody in who owns a Mooncat.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think it would. How would you find if they're not displayed on Opensea? Is there a filter that allows you to select the accessories that you want if they're not displayed? How would you?
Yep.
How would that work?
And,
Okay.
and that is sort of some of the evolving conversations we're having right now of like, all right, if they're not visible, how do people find them? Where are they visible? Is there a list of ones that we approve that is much narrower than the criteria we have right now? And sort of that is the ongoing discussion that we're having with the community right now.
Is there anything else like coming in the future that you wanted to bring up or talk about? From the community perspective. Oh, I guess there was one thing I think we should probably talk about since it's an ongoing thing is, right now there's discussions of exploring possibilities for the Mooncats IP. Nothing's been committed to, but do you guys want to just speak to that? What's going on there?
I'll let you handle that, Brooks.
Sure. So I guess at this point, yes, we have announced publicly that we're exploring that as an option. That's one of kind of speaking to the touching back to the idea of as Ponderware as a company is exploring, how to be a viable Web3 company, and even as the Web3 space is evolving, figuring out which direction to go in. And so yes, we have been open to exploring that as an option, and yes, talks are ongoing for that one. But yeah, we can't say much more on that, as part of that process is a whole bunch of NDA things.
Sure.
But yes, it is a process that is ongoing. It's an option that we are exploring.
The first thing that occurred to me when you guys made that announcement was like, man, that would be really rad if a DAO was formed that could, allow community members themselves to actually buy the IP too. That'd be a pretty maybe a first in the NFT space. So anyway, interesting stuff.
Interesting speed, yeah, and that also the DAO idea is one that as we've just talked about, like communications with the community of figuring out ways to have the sentiment of the community be recognized is a good one, and one we're exploring more opportunities for. But also, okay, kind of back to the idea of, is the Mooncat community both a large community or a small community, of making sure that the idea of quorum or even of active, members of it, that, is there enough of a cross section to be able to actively see that, it is actually a representative sample piece of it there. And so again, with Ponderware having a very long-term, slow and steady ethos of making sure that things are going to be stable for the future, having those conversations with the community of, is there an active sentiment that people would actually participate in governance, is something that would need to be there first before we'd be comfortable handing it off to an entity like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, DAOs have their own risks, and they need to have, ensure that they have structured governance and ownership too. Again, make sure you have enough trusted people as multi-sig holders and that kind of thing. Because again, the last thing you'd want to see is all the community members, and I don't know if you want to call them investors. I think community members would be a better term, but people who put in, like, contributed to see that get rugged, that'd be really tragic. Yeah.
It's sort of been interesting. We have definitely had a lot of conversations about the potential of a Mooncat DAO over the last year, and maybe of interest to you, ZeroG, is one of the people that we have talked to a lot is Crypto Lurker, who is sort of like my equivalent over at Curio Cards, and sort of her experience of creating the DAO and getting active participants, and sort of all of her experience with that has definitely been informative of, like, all right, if/when Mooncats goes forward with a DAO, what is that going to look like? What are the potential pros and cons? What are the pitfalls that we can try to avoid based off of other DAOs experiences? We're looking a lot at the ApeCoin DAO and sort of the growing pains that they have been having, where their successes are, where they have had some struggles. And so, we are definitely soaking in all this information. I don't think anybody at Ponderware is inherently opposed to the idea of a Mooncats DAO. There is a lot of potential good that it could do. But we definitely have some concerns about activity inside of DAOs as a whole, inside of the crypto ecosystem.
Yeah, I know. So I participate in the Curio Cards DAO and also the Lao DAO as well. So one thing that came up, and I was talking to someone else recently too, that there's other tools that I need to look at that I apparently already solved this problem. But at least with these DAOs, we're using that was that multi-sig that we're using. Just escaped my mind, but essentially, with these multi-sigs, you set up a certain number of key holders or signers, and one of the problems with a DAO is that you need to ensure that at whatever level of signers are there, that they're actually active, right? Because a DAO is more it's more participatory, and most of these ones that have participated, no one's getting compensated really, or if they are, it's nominal, right? And that's not really the purpose for the ones that I've it's just been more for fun really, and to help out the community. So you have to have a mechanism basically to prevent people people die, people get sick, whatever, they drop off, whatever happens. You need to make sure that there's a mechanism to where you never fall beneath the required number of signers in order to maintain the viability of the DAO. That's and the assets, the treasury assets, and that's Gnosis Safe. That's what it is I was thinking of. But yeah, I mean, that's really crucial that that you don't allow that to happen. So I know with it's rudimentary. I'm sure, and I'm going to look into the more sophisticated option. But with LaoDAO, what we've implemented is a monthly check-in for all the signers on the wallet, right? To make sure that they're alive and available, right? Again, because you want to prevent the worst case from happening. I mean, and I'm sure that this probably will happen or has happened, with a multi-sig getting essentially, I don't know, become locked permanently if people, people drop off.
Someone goes missing.
Goes dark. Yeah, interesting. But yeah, there's definitely risks there for sure.
And I mean, even within the Ponderware staff, like, we have a Gnosis that we use for, long-term funding, and like there is backups for backups in terms of signers.
Yeah,
And
great.
even coordinating that amongst a pretty small number of people has its challenges. I wonder how even more challenging it is when you have disparate strangers all trying to coordinate that together.
So I was talking to someone about DAO specifically recently. It was really enlightening. As Max from Curio Cards, he's one of the OG artists. He's really really well versed in the space. But one of the challenges that we've had in the curio card space, at least for me, is I have to I'm still doing like a IRL job. So like the DAO coordination calls we have sometimes conflict with my job. So I don't know. It's because we're scheduling those in the week. So I don't know. There's a lot of things that have to work out, but ultimately I think it's a positive, at least for the curio cards community. So I, like you said, just making sure that the way that the curio cards one was specifically structured for the benefit of curio cards and the community. And again, like making sure it's not, to me, like if you were to do like a Mooncast one, it's not making sure that's not about the price or market or pumping or anything like that, but basically like more of a supportive function that again, I'd hate to see it get corrupted and turn into something, I don't know, scammy, right? So yeah, anyway, but
good
that's
things to be aware of. Yep, as
yeah,
I would agree on the DAO space of crypto is rather new, NFTs are rather new, and DAOs are rather new piece of it, of like the roadmap of, or even the template of what makes a good DAO, I think is still being written.
It's a big question mark.
And eventually I'd like to get like not have to have a full-time job, so I could be more like participate more in these different orgs too. Like I'm in too many discords and too many things to keep track of. Plus I've got a lot of IRL stuff going on right now for this next year. But one of the things that Max brought up that I hadn't really thought of is essentially over like on a long enough term where DAOs become more of a thing. And there's, they have enough sustainable funding. I could definitely see where we could have like basically being the equivalent of a board member, a DAO member, or a treasury holder, or what have you, basically be a full-time job for someone where they sit on, like, say, 5 or 10 DAOs or whatever it is that would actually make it meaningful for them, or that's all they do, instead of again, I don't know. There's a lot of interesting
we
possibilities.
have politicians that are it's their job to be the representative of their area, and we have the traditional sense of a board member is a job for many people to do. And so right now being a member of a DAO can be treated very casually, and it may depend on the DAO. And I think that also will evolve, similar to the idea of an NFT. The definition of an NFT is very broad. If you just say, I have an NFT, you need a lot more information than that to know how excited you want to be about this NFT. Same thing of, I'm a member of a DAO, or I want to join a DAO. It's like, yes, you need a lot more information about what is the seriousness or the expectation of that particular DAO for activity, for what's actually going to happen into the future, or like, is it a DAO that's only expected to last a couple of years and then have fulfilled its purpose and disband?
And I think, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to point out another interesting aspect as like security for these DAOs is really important. Like for most of the DAOs that I'm involved in, everyone's using a hardware wallet. But and interesting, you were talking about Axie Infinity earlier, Paws. They are a perfect example of what not to do. They had a multi-sig where they essentially, oh God, they lost over $500 million on essentially they had a server that was essentially had all these keys.
Blind signing. Yep.
It loaded hot into memory, right? So whenever someone rooted that server, all they had to do is load. They probably even had them as text files or something stupid. But even if you're adept enough to just read it from memory, which is easily, there's tools to do that, then it's one of the biggest rugs in all of crypto, and it was totally irresponsible what they did. So anyway, just want to throw that out. That's a really
we do irresponsible things every day for the sake of convenience.
It's only $500 million, guys.
Yeah, just a few pennies. No big deal. No big deal.
The petty
Is
cash
there-
fund.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the thing for me is sort of like, how are we going to get people who are not crypto natives into DAOs? Because, as a practical example, my spouse found Jonathan Mann's Amber Heard's Muffin song and was like, I have to own that. And so I bought it. And so now I am like trying to explain what a DAO is to someone who is not involved in crypto at all. And even I'm struggling to do that. And I'm in a DAO. I'm in actually a couple DAOs at this point.
Yeah, it's just like that paradigm shift with explaining NFTs to someone. Even for me at least, it was a paradigm shift for it to really click, like the big picture, the long term for like historic NFTs versus crypto. Because I was crypto for forever, but it was a paradigm shift. And I think to go into NFTs, and I think that there's a little bit of that for people that aren't crypto native to like grasp these DAOs too. How basically have people all over the world who've never even seen each other to participate on something like this. Yeah, well, Brooks, did you have anything you want to talk about for the future? Anything else you're excited about for Mooncats, or anything you're working on?
For I think the future of, I think that in general the NFT space, and yeah, Mooncats being part of that, starting to see more of the Lego pieces coming together. That I think seeing the community get excited about especially the metaverse integrations, the Isotile and World Wide Web sorts of integrations with Mooncats, that I think there's still more possibilities for those going forward. We got a party going on. Let's see, the end
Friday
of
the
this week,
13th.
Friday the 13th coming up. Piece there, and just the concept of having that become more normal. Of that was kind of the idea of when the buzzword of metaverse was launched, of it, the vision kind of idea being just part of the way that you live your life, the way that you have your social interactions, and this sort of leading the way towards the evolution from the AOL chat room through to Facebook, and now on to it's a chat room that looks like an actual virtual world, whether it's a pixelated world like World Wide Web, or if it's a 3D isometric world like Isotile, or trying to be full VR like where Meta/Facebook is going. Those sorts of experiences becoming the normal way you represent yourself, and just the way you have casual fun on an evening, is an exciting era to be part of. And moving towards that piece of the way that you present yourself with these assets, with your collections. Myself seeing NFTs become the way that I can be involved in other people's collections or like what they are interested in. That to me is an interesting piece of seeing kind of how the gaming community has evolved. Of if someone else plays a game that I don't play, now there's things like Twitch where I can watch someone else playing, and I can see like what they get excited about, or see someone who is very talented play their game. And the idea of it being an esport, that it is they are an athlete and doing something very well. And now with NFTs, I think that going to the next step of like, if someone has achieved something in a game, of like they have this really cool skin, they have this really cool whatever, if I don't play that game, I won't see their really cool skin. But if it's an NFT and like they have it in their Isotile room, I can go visit and see at least some sort of a representation of the cool thing they earned in that game. And like being able to see people's trophy cases or achievements be represented, and that I can see what other people are proud of without necessarily needing to play that particular game myself, is an exciting direction to be going in.
Yeah, the gaming aspect is something I'm excited about too, and I've been really a little bit surprised and not surprised that the traditional gamers have resisted NFTs from traditional publishers. But part of that is due to traditional publishers have been pretty abusive with microtransactions. So I get that, but
well, and there's also this idea of traditional gaming publishers want their cake and to eat it too. So they want to be able to make NFTs, and then they put them on these crap side chains that are these chains even going to exist in 10 years from now? Like totally. When COD shut down their game with NFTs in it, The company was just like, well, those NFTs are your mementos of a time that is now past. And it's like, no, that inherently breaks the concept of what NFTs are. If you are going to embrace NFTs as a gaming company, you have to embrace NFTs in their entirety. They can't just be the thing that makes you money, and now that the game is done, they're not worth anything anymore. That is completely against the ethos of NFTs as a long-term asset. That is not going to cut it. If when gaming companies truly commit to NFTs, they have to be on layer 1 or a well-respected layer 2. They have to be, future-proofed in a way that they can live either past the game or the game can live on without those companies continuing to put development time and money into those. But like at the moment, 99% of the efforts that we're seeing in gaming for NFTs is really half-baked.
Terrible. Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. They're trying to tie these to their own corporate, like you said, BS chains that aren't real. But really, I think the first publishers or legit publishers that get it, that, again, they can even get like a couple percent off the secondary or whatever it is, right? If they put it on a main chain. But the example I like to use is, like the pre-NFT digital collectibles that I think of all the time as an example is CSGO, right? So they did that, they launched skins, right? But all of that stuff is like exclusively, it's tradable, but it only lives within Valve's servers,
within the
right?
Steam ecosystem, right?
Yeah, exactly. So essentially we have like this $1 billion, like I was reading in an article that the skin market for CSGO is projected to be over $1 billion. So which is tremendous, right? But so essentially we have a distinct possibility that whenever Valve or any other publisher that has these digital collectibles goes under, all of those evaporate, and like you said, all of the value with those goes away too, where again, I could see where even if the game dies organically, I could see collectors who were really into CSGO in their youth or used to play or just like to watch, like if those were actually NFTs, it would be really rad if they could actually buy the skin that the pro that they loved was actually wearing in like one of the major finals or something.
Yeah.
I mean, you're robbing them of,
like sports jerseys. Yep.
Yeah, you're robbing them of that opportunity to have that. So I think long term, or at least I'm hopeful that these game companies will get it, that they just can't be so greedy and abusive. But if they just do it fairly, then I think it can be a real hit. I mean, it makes sense.
I think you go for it.
I mean, it's one of the things that we bake into Mooncats long term is like, even if we're not around, we want people to be able to have the tools and utilities to continue enjoying Mooncats down the line. You can use Mooncats in metaverses like Isotile and World Wide Web. You're going to be able to, if you have a Mooncat, you will have a unique flag that you can use in the upcoming Crypto Fighters V2 game. If you have a Mooncat, you'll be able to pit them against other NFTs in the ZeroG game. Like, we are always looking for ways to, all right, I have a Mooncat, now what do I get for just holding it? What other entertainment can I participate in for having that Mooncat? And I feel like the gaming industry needs to embrace that sort of mentality for NFTs to succeed in the broader market.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the big, I think long term having an open metaverse is going to be really crucial. I would hate to see all of these I'd hate to see like Meta's version where they basically they're the middleman and essentially own everything. I mean, it's
50% fees.
Yeah. What Paws is describing is, it just came out recently that Meta, like their grift is that they want to be the market maker for all of the NFTs, be the middleman, and they want to take 50% cut of everything. It's absolutely insane. They are out of their mind. I mean, and it's not just the money, but again, it's the fact it's a closed ecosystem. I think where where I think we'll see winners long term in that space is ones that allow you to bring in the existing assets, and because that by bringing in existing assets, you're also bringing in existing communities. Again, like Mooncats or Carrier Cards or Puny Codes or whatever it is, right? I mean, there's a zillion communities, even modern communities, right? It doesn't have to be vintage, but Bored Apes or whatever. It's you're expanding your reach instead of trying to essentially bootstrap something just on your own. That is way too hard.
And I think the thing that Meta has sort of totally lost the thread on is, as in the last year, the mentality of the crypto space as a whole is we accept a larger amount of fees on our NFTs. And they see that and it's like, oh, great, we can charge whatever we want. But the reality is, when you actually drill down into that message, is we accept higher fees when the fee goes to the creator of the project, because we understand that that funding is then used to turn around and make the project bigger and better. Higher artist fees, lower platform fees, please, is sort of the messaging that crypto is really starting to like rally behind. I remember a year ago when we were really stepping up our educating on like, why is it important to get acclimated? The acclimated Mooncats had a 3% royalty that went to Ponderware. And there were a lot of people that were like, whoa, that is really high. You guys are crazy. You're eventually just going to have to lower that. And now at 3%, we are actually one of the lowest royalty values on not just historical NFTs, but NFTs in general. The sort of gold standard has become up to 10%.
I think that's a great point. That's something we could talk about is, I 100%, I would love to see platform fees go down and artists maintain, even if the total fees stay the same, artists need to get a cut. I mean, again, you guys are doing cool things, and you guys need to, have funds to continue your work. I personally, I resent having to pay these high fees for the marketplace. And 3% is more than fair. That's one thing I criticized about when Pride Punks launched, they decided to put a 7.5% royalty on that. And the point being is that not that they can't use it and make legitimate use of the funds. They don't even have an idea what to use them for yet, as far as I know. But the point is that, if you have the fees too high, you're basically gonna kill your trading volume. And I don't flip, actively flip NFTs, but by keeping the fees lower, or reasonable, like again 5-6%, whatever it is, you allow people to help provide liquidity to the market and provide a buffer, when especially when people need to cash out or whatnot. So yeah, it's definitely a fine line, but
it's been sort of interesting to see the concept of Mooncats as a stable coin, and like the 0.6 peg has kind of gone from something that was kind of derisively spoken to something that a lot of the community embraces, is like, this is our superpower. Like, I can't believe other collections fall to below this value. Like, what are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, in this, like we're right now, and we're kind of a pretty big recession in the vintage space, but Mooncats have really held up, whereas a lot of collections I didn't think would dip as far as they have. I mean, it's been whether it's people paying taxes or whatnot, but a lot of the liquidity has just vanished. But Mooncats have held way stronger than a lot of other interesting collections. So yeah, and again, I just think it's a longer term game, though. People, and a lot of these discords, they talk about the floor and when it's going to moon. But and again, I think it's inevitable for these quality projects over the long term. It's one of the things I read is, when I was writing that last article, is that at the end of last year, there were 1 million active Opensea wallets that had done at least one transaction, which, there's a lot of people that have more than one wallet that have done a transaction. So there's less than 1 million active NFT traders that have used Opensea last year, right? And this is comparing to internet population of I believe it was something like 3.6 billion people. So I mean, the level of growth as people become more aware of NFTs and digital collectibles, in particular in the internet, I think there's only blue sky ahead of us long term. I mean, of course, we'll have ups and downs. I mean, again, in crypto, you guys are familiar with that, but long term, I think the prospect for the vintage space is great.
Yeah, and that piece of, again, yeah, the duality of like preparing it for your children piece of it,
Mhm.
and also like recognizing that once it gets to the point of my children having, inheriting my Mooncats, of like, yeah, how much of a history they will have. And like at that point, if it's, the Mooncats have been around for 100 years, the extra 5 years that they've got over some of the 2022 projects, whether
Mhm.
that will be, the icing on top piece of it, or like the thing that then makes them truly recognized as antiques in the space as well, will be interesting to see.
I love the White Rabbit's graphic that he has, that White Rabbit 111, his graphic he has where, again, it's that funnel. There's so few projects, like you said, less than 20 from 2017. It just keeps getting smaller and smaller the further back you go. So
I'm just sad that there's no little fire icon besides Mooncats on his other chart.
oh
Why
man.
you no love us, White Rabbit? Come on, we're historical. We're awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Mooncats. There's a bunch of great projects out there. Again, as long as the integrity is maintained, I don't see how it doesn't do great long term. But well, I wanted to open up. So is there anything else you'd like to talk about? I know I've had you on for quite a while.
The one other comment that I just wanted to touch back to, of like you're talking about the Steam Marketplace piece of it,
Mhm.
that I think, yeah, there is definitely the question of like, will existing game companies embrace, if they already have a marketplace like that, of like, will they convert, sort of a thing. I've also seen the narrative of like around, if you're building a new thing, if you're building a new game, why would you choose NFTs? And some of the narratives that I've gotten, or discussions I've gotten into, were people taking the stance of well, you can do the things that NFTs do with using other technologies. It's like, yes, but that's not the point.
Yeah.
The point of NFTs is not to be more feature rich than other technologies. It's the idea of, it is a standard. It is a thing like saying an API, or like the REST standard, or the HTML language. Yet, or taking the other parallel of when like the WordPress blogging engine came out. Before that, or in that time, right when it came out, you could have said, "Oh, I want to make a blog. Do I want to use the WordPress engine as the platform for it?" And some people could say, "Oh, you don't need to use WordPress to make a blog. You can make a blog using just HTML and you can do other stuff with it." Yes, technically you could, but then it's harder, and it's also then not part of a larger ecosystem of things that are working together. And I think that's where we're at now, of similarly to choosing to launch a blog using WordPress as a engine, if you're choosing to launch a game with using NFTs, you're part of a platform that, the marketplaces, the communities, the wallets, the other parts can be taken care of for you, that you don't necessarily, if you're building a game that has a marketplace, you don't necessarily need to be a large enough development shop to build the marketplace part of it, if you are comfortable letting Looks Rare, Opensea, and what marketplaces handle that it can be a bootstrapping tool. I think, and that piece of it is, I think, currently missing from a lot of the narrative, that people go for I don't need the NFT technology. It's like, true, but you could build it all yourself, but that's a lot of work and effort. The benefits you get from choosing this platform are, a lot of it's done for you, and you can trust the security of it, piece of
Yeah.
it. It'll be
Yeah.
Every
interesting to
time
see
I
if
hear
that
that
catches on.
argument, I think of the people who are like, why did Microsoft make a new console? There is already two in existence. It's like, well, because options are good. And if you choose to only release your game on PlayStation and not on Xbox, even though the systems are very similar, you're losing out on a potential market base, a potential customer base that you wouldn't otherwise have. It's good business.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the final thing that popped up on that subject, but when we're talking, is Steam actually, they went up the 180 degrees. They actually have
Mm-hmm.
forbidden NFT games from their marketplace, which I think is they have a vested interest in their existing microtransactions, but I think that's going to be gosh, long term, that's got to be a big foot bullet. That's super short sighted.
On the flip side, the Epic Game Store has said, if you want to put an NFT game on our platform, reach out to us. We would love to have that conversation.
Oh, I didn't know that.
For every door that closes, there's another one that's opening, because as much as there is a segment of the general public and within, fandoms that are like, NFTs are evil and you will never convince me otherwise, there is always that silent other half of the story that is, I don't mind NFTs. I am interested in NFTs as a concept. I would like to know more about it. I am just being shouted down by the noisiest people who are making all of this squawk, and just sort of like they're pushing down some of the conversation that would otherwise happen because they're just loud.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, how cool would it be if you played a game and you were the first person to get some achievement and in the world, right? And you get a special NFT like on chain.
Would be awesome.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. You're like, hey, I'm the only one. This is a one of one NFT. I actually,
awesome. If the achievements become POAPs, like,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, I was the first person who collected all 4 Teenage Mutant Ninja plant friends. And I actually got an extra plant friend memento that is of Splinter. And so like, that is a very small collection that was created by someone who got their start in NFTs as a Mooncats boutique artist, went on to make their own NFT collection. And like, I thought the art of that collection was really cool. And so I made an effort to pick up, very specific types of NFTs within that collection. And I was rewarded for doing so. Like that like pushes all my happy gamer buttons. Like, why don't more NFT collections do that?
Yeah, exactly. That's cool. Well, cool. Well, yeah, I mean, this has been a really fun conversation. We'll give you one more chance. If there's anything else you popped up you want to talk about before we wrap it up.
Come join the Discord. We're discord.gg/Mooncats. Whether you own 100 Mooncats, 1 Mooncat, whether you own 0 Mooncats, thinking about buying one, not thinking about buying one, come join us. We're an awesome community. We're super open and friendly. If you're looking for a Mooncat, if you're looking for, information on crypto and NFTs in general, we love having new members. Everybody's super friendly and helpful. For a lot of people, Mooncats is or was their first NFT. And so like, we love fostering that atmosphere of like, if you're curious about NFTs, come to us. We'll be happy to help you learn.
Brooks, you have any final thoughts? Anything you want to add?
I think it's good. Yeah, we touched on, it's been a great conversation, and I think we touched upon a lot of wonderful things, which, yeah, I think we're all complete at the moment.
Okay, well, I certainly appreciate you guys taking the time out to chat with me. It's been fun for me too. So I'm going to go ahead.